In the modern era, the golf industry has seen its fair share of expansion and contraction. And whether that's from too much competition, poor business practices, it really doesn't matter because newer courses will all of a sudden disappear. Courses that have been there for decades or a century are no longer there. And it seems like you either have to be extremely well established for decades or a century, or you have to have a niche in the industry. And my guest today, as well as his business partners who are his brothers and a friend of theirs, are creating just that niche about 25 miles south of Chicago at Flossmoor Golf Club. They purchased it, Flossmoor about a year ago, and what they've done there is converted it from a country club to a golf club, where the total focus has gone from scattered and everywhere when it was a country club to where it is now solely directed towards the golfing experience and the golf course. And if you'd like to play a 100-year-old golf course that is in great shape, where you can have a great time, where everybody is there for the same reasons, then you really want to check out what they're doing. And I'll have a link to their website in the summary. But if you're in the Chicagoland and you're looking for a club like that, that's as a very, very reasonable price, then what they've done is just for you. And that has been illustrated by them going from about 35 to 39 members a year ago to now over 180 in a very, very short period of time. So word is spreading very fast. My guest today is George Goich, and this is a very special show for me because the Goich family and my family have been very close, and we go back about 3 to 4 generations in the Chicago area. George and I had somewhat very similar and paralleling careers. His was a little more advanced than mine because he's about 7 years older than I was. And although we got to connect a few times over the number of years, we never got to really sit down and just talk about everything, which was nice to do now since we can both look back on 20 to 30 years of being in the business. And he has had a phenomenal career, and he's had just worked in just about every facet of the game in the industry that you possibly can, where he started in the bag room. He worked his way up to assistant, head professional, tournament director, has taken clubs from pure dirt to grass to extremely successful in their membership. He's been a director of golf. He has worked all over the country, Florida, Arizona, Palm Springs, Hawaii, Colorado, Boston, you name it. And he also had a phenomenal playing career where he played the South American Tour. He won a number of tournaments around the country and just fell short of obtaining his PGA Tour card. So we talk about his career in golf. We obviously talk about Flossmoor Golf Club and the great things they're doing there. We talk about his playing career, what held him back. And you could just imagine the number of stories that he tells in today's show in being around that world and that industry for so many years. So this was a great show for me to do. I'm sure you're going to love George as much as I do by the time you get done hearing what he has to say. So as always, please give a big Golf 360 welcome to my dear family friend, PGA Tour or PGA member and golf club owner, Mr. George Goich. What's up, everybody, and welcome to the Golf 360 podcast. I'm the host, Pete Popovich. So you may be asking yourself, what is Golf 360? And Golf 360 is a show that was designed to introduce you to people associated with the game of golf to help you improve not only at your game, but also your life. Almost all of our guests are from within the industry in some way, shape, or form, but some of the guests we have are from outside the industry, and it mainly revolves around the business world with a few others scattered in here and there. Now, all of the guests that we have a few things in common. One, they all were highly successful and accomplished in their field. Two, each has something to pass along that will help you in your game and your life. And three, they were all more than willing to give back by passing along the things that they use to help them in their career, and even some of the mistakes that they made so that others don't make them in their journey. So I hope you find listening to them as enjoyable as I did interviewing them, and that each and every one of you benefits from the information that they so willingly and graciously pass along. Hey everybody, I want to give a big shout out to a new sponsor of the Golf 360 podcast, and that's Affinity Wealth Management Group. We all work exceptionally hard for our money, and none of us can afford to let that fall into the dark abyss of the big box financial service firms and their jack of all trades and master of none mantra, which basically means you become a number within a cookie cutter model that's also often accompanied by massive fees. Your future deserves more than average returns and little attention. At Affinity Wealth Management, they ensure that your financial goals receive highly individualized, tailored attention from experts, not just advisors, who are in the industry to be great and not average. As a client of Affinity Wealth, you receive a customized solution to your customized life, keeping in mind your family's financial situation, values, and risk tolerance. Call Affinity Wealth today for a no-cost consultation with one of their experts at 724-754-8200. Again, that's 724-754-8200. Or you can also check them out on the web at www.affinitywealthmg.com. That's AFFINITYWEALTHMG.com. This podcast is brought to you in part by Just Thrive Probiotic. You may be surprised to learn that your digestive system is the key to creating and maintaining the quality of your physical, mental, and emotional health, and it's one of the body's most essential systems. That's why the majority of nutritionists today highly recommend probiotics as an indispensable nutritional supplement. As a discriminating consumer, you've probably been searching for a probiotic that is proven, potent, and effective, and you found it. Just Thrive is your best choice for maintaining a healthy lifestyle. Just Thrive Probiotic captures the power of hundreds of thousands of years of nature's design with a specialized bacillus strain formulation that guarantees survivability through the stomach and upper digestive system. Supports optimum gut health, digestive health, immune health, and delivers antioxidants. Great for adults, kids, and the whole family. Use promo code GOLF360 at www.thriveprobiotic.com for 10% off your order. All right, here with George Goich. George, thanks for coming on the show.
You're welcome, Pete. Thanks for having me.
You know, I've been looking forward to doing this one for a long time because I think our families go back about 3 or 4 generations from the old neighborhood in South Chicago. And while you and I had somewhat parallel paths in golf, with little age difference, but I think about 6 or 7 years, we never really connected outside of a picnic or maybe your brother's house or something in the past. And the golf industry really doesn't lend itself, as it shoots us all over the country, to connect quite a bit. But outside of our families being so close, and I think my dad's dad was godfather to your mom, if I'm not mistaken. I know we have a lot of similar friends. We have a lot of stories to discuss, and I'm really excited to do this today.
Yeah, well, if we did the Serbian Hall of Fame for golf, it'd definitely be on one hand. You know that. So, maybe a finger. But anyway, yeah, well, no, it's good. Yeah, it's good to be here. This is my first, not my first interview, obviously, but obviously my first podcast. And recently I've actually started watching them on YouTube. The guys in Arizona I like, and so I start, watching them and listening to them. So, it's nice. To me, it's a nice form because people can talk longer or less, and there's not one of these set, you have 7 minutes, cut, edit. So I think people can actually get into a story and tell some good stories in these types of formats.
I was talking to my brother earlier today, and he's the PXG. I think he's district manager, rep, whatever you want to call it. And he's going to come on, and we're going to talk about the day in the life of a rep, kind of give people an inside look at that side of the industry. But he said, sometimes HR company wants you to run everything by him and do this and that. And I'm like, well, that's why podcasting is kind of taken off, because it's so unrestricted right now. So it's growing so fast because you can basically do whatever you want, say whatever you want, so long as the people are listening.
Right.
So, and to your, when you had messaged me earlier today about, is it audio, is it video? And I'm just started to play with, or looking at what video, apparatus, so to speak, to use. I'm not a real big tech person. So I'm very slow when it comes to that shit. But hopefully, as this gets going some more, things will be in video so people can watch it on YouTube, like you do with the ones you follow.
Yeah, and I don't know how that would work. The ones I watch, a lot of guys obviously are there in person, but with the whole Zoom craze, I'm just sure that is going to be the way to go. People, everything now, really, is really done with, remote, I mean, I live in a socialist state here that, I mean, they want you to go outside and wear a mask. And I'm surprised no one's going to kick down my door because I'm not wearing a mask in my house doing this interview. That's how ridiculous these people are. So I could probably do a whole podcast on my anger about this stuff if you want.
Yeah, and I think a lot of people would listen. You know, if you were to, when you get down this way, we'll do another one. And anytime someone does it, I call it in studio. It's really office in my house. I got a pretty decent sized office. I got a Pit Boss grill about a year and a half ago, and so we always do a big rib cookout, macaroni and cheese, the whole works, and we just stuff our faces before we go on, and then we usually have a Buffalo Trace or some kind of Ghost Coast is my buddy's liquor company over in Savannah, so we'll bust open a bottle of that and have a good time. But hopefully you'll be able to get down here sometime. I think Marco's coming in a couple weeks for a weekend getaway and tune up his game for the spring. So maybe we can get you down here for that.
I'm actually going to drive down for the National Club Pro in April, so I will make sure that I call you and set that up, and I'll make sure I stop down there and do that because I'm going to drive. Oh, it's at Port St. Lucie, which, you know.
That's not too far from here.
No, you know, I mean, you know, I've played there a couple times in senior championship and stuff, but I'm assuming they're going to move it to Frisco when that opens up. I was actually out there 6 weeks ago, and you want to talk about you talk about knowing people, and so anyway, one of my dearest friends is Brian Gathright, who is a top 100 instructor, is just a who's who. I think he's easily one of the best instructors in the world, and his track record's proven it. And so I was going down to work with him, and he said, hey, you know, two of my best players are playing in a big amateur tournament in Dallas. Why don't you fly to Dallas? We'll watch them play. And so we did. He goes, and then the next day, you know, those guys from Goda and my son are meeting with Chris Como and Nota Begay to try and kind of explain the system to him. And it was supposed to be, like I said, an hour meeting. It turned into 5 hours. So it was really fascinating. But Chris's house that he has, you can see all over YouTube with DeChambeau, is right in Frisco, Texas, right where they're building the whole PGA Center. So, you know, that's a booming spot. I'm assuming that whole project will just make it even more growth. But
yeah, Susie Whaley talked to that a little bit when she came on. I think it was about a year ago. She was saying how they had just broken ground and the plans were underway, and that's going to be an interesting thing to watch that develop and open up, and the growth that they do from that place.
Yeah. Hopefully the courses have a little. I mean, you know, Port St. Lucie is what it is, but I mean they're typical Florida, you know. But even out there, Frisco, Texas is not like it's much hillier than Port St. Lucie. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, you know, it's fascinating. I know people have already moved and went out there, and yeah, I don't know if does anybody even know the answer why they decided to go from West Palm out to Texas. I have no idea.
That's a good one. Escapes me. That was kind of odd when I heard that. I'm like, wait, you're moving to San Francisco? Like, no, Frisco, Texas. Okay, why there?
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, probably because Seth Waugh's buddy owns 2,000 acres that they put it on, probably. Mm-hmm. That would be my guess.
How was Como's house? Because I'm sure a lot of people have followed DeChambeau on there, and it looks like it's just a giant Disneyland for golf nerds.
Yeah, it's like a frat house just turned into a sports performance center. And he was telling the story that, you know, when he decided to do this, the realtor, they walked into about 80 houses, and he'd be in a house for 20 seconds and go, nope. And because all he did was look at the first floor and the living room, family room, whatever. And if the ceilings weren't big enough and wide enough, he couldn't do what he wanted to do. And, you know, when you go in there, it looks like a crack house. All the windows are, I swear to God, if you look at it, there's like that foam insulation on all the windows, one for the noise, but to keep the glare out. So you cannot see outside and no one can see in. So it's kind of funny. But yeah, there's a basketball hoop. He's got weights. He's got this, I don't know, whatever the highest tech camera set up through all around it. And, you know, the weight transfer plates and computers and, it's fascinating stuff. So, and he could not be a nicer guy. I mean, I think you said you're trying to get him on there. He's really,
Yeah,
really bright
we've
guy.
gone back and forth for about 6 months. It's just he obviously is super busy, and I don't press him by any means. I mean, he's who he is, and I've got this little podcast. But we have a lot of mutual friends, and a couple of them have come on, and he said, yeah, I like what you do, and let's just get it scheduled when I can fit it in. So I just message him every once in a while. Hey, just reaching out. If you're going to be opening up anytime, let me know. I'll get you slotted, and that'll be a fun one, because obviously what he's done the last number of years and how he's risen to one of the peak instructors in the country.
Yeah, no, it is. So,
and everybody says the same thing. He's the coolest, nicest guy in the world. And so what he portrays on television through the show, what is it, Swing Expedition, is exactly who he is. That's cool to see.
Yeah. So, yeah, and that came apart because Brian's still very good friends with Nota Begay, and Nota Begay made the introduction, and Nota was there. And it's, it was a fascinating several hours. Learned a lot of things that, just modern science and modern kinesiology just really, I shouldn't say modern, old kinesiology really has gotten wrong. And these guys can sit there and prove it to you and show you who and why. And it's really cool stuff. So.
That GOTA stuff I find fascinating. Like when we talked, I think last week, I said I'd followed them and watched them quite a bit in the past. Do you know much about their stuff, or is it you were just introduced to it?
Yeah, so Brian's been talking about it a while because his son got involved in it. So I mean, again, I won't go on and on. I mean, but the Cliff Notes version of what they're trying to prove, which they've proven, is when you look at so many of the greatest athletes, that their feet and ankles work the way your foot was designed to work when you're a child. Your heels kick out and your toes come in, and they call it inside ankle high.
Mm-hmm.
And the biggest guy I could tell you to watch, it's easy to watch, is Michael Jordan. And then they show this wonderful clip of Ed Reed coming out of the tunnel, and you watch his feet. And then they go all the way back to Babe Ruth. Babe Ruth ran that way. And then they show that famous picture of Ted Williams on the on-deck circle, way his ankles. So if you trace all of these people that have this trait, the one thing they all had in common is none of them had any tragic major injuries. And then when they show all the injuries to these guys who are working their feet the opposite way, those are the guys that have blown out all their ACLs, the MCLs, and their Achilles. So, and the biggest thing they show is, when you look at a baby, your feet naturally work that way. And because of two main things, shoes and forcing kids to sit in chairs all day, they have changed the genetics of the way we walk, and our feet start to creep out. And if you go look at these indigenous countries, still to this day, these people are walking around barefoot. They never have any problems, but their feet work the way they were designed to work.
Right.
And that's kind of the premise. And the guy who founded it and started it and took it to the next level had massive back injuries and all kinds of stuff. And through his just dedication and work and passion, he kind of solved this. And if you spend just an hour with them, they can really, really explain it and get you to buy in. Because I'm a doubter. I usually doubt everything. Boy, they had me after about 2 hours explaining it and showing videos over and over. And if you look at all your animals, they all walk that way. So, but yeah, so if you could ever get those guys on, believe me, fascinating stuff.
Yeah,
and then just go online, Google it. Yeah, go look at the videos and listen to them talk. And anyway.
And for anyone listening, it's GOATA. It's greatest. What's the acronym?
Greatest of all time athletes.
That's right.
Yeah. And then the guys that are bad, they call them WOTAs, worst of all time athletes. The guys that are who feet stick out. And that's one of the things that they were trying to explain to Chris. And I won't name names because it's just not right. But they specifically pointed out very prominent guys on tour who are WOTAs and who all have hip problems, knee problems, back problems. And Tiger was one of them, actually.
Mm-hmm.
And then they look at the guys, now, and he's like, listen, I'm just telling you, pay attention to these names. All of these people will have a problem. And so, so anyway, it's cool stuff.
Before we get too deep into this, I've got to ask you to tell a story of you and Marco when you guys basically tried to set the land speed record in your brother's Porsche going from Cal City to Michigan City Mall. Because I remember hearing that right after it happened, and I couldn't believe it. So that was one thing everyone said when they heard you were coming on. They said, you got to have George tell that story.
So, there's some other, well, now that Marco's retired, I probably could tell some other bad stories too. But so my brother, who's a car junkie, Michael, bought this European turbo Porsche. I don't know what year it was, 87, whatever it was, but it was awesome. Matter of fact, he regrets selling it because I know that thing is really valuable. And so I had driven it a couple of times. It's really powerful and scary. But Marco and I were tooling around on a beautiful summer day, and all of a sudden we're like, hey, let's get on I-80, heading east, and, let's see how fast we can get this thing going. And I'm like, listen, you're going to watch for traffic and cops, and I'm going to try and get this thing as fast as humanly possible. And I got it up to 162. And I mean, you are flying by signs, and it is frightening. And, for anybody who's done 100 or 110, I could tell you when you start going past those digits, it gave me a true respect for guys who race cars, really did. And I mean, I think we were in Michigan City, in 7 minutes. It was unbelievable. So, yeah. So that's funny you bring that story up. So,
you're there's a couple things I want to talk about today. One of them is your PGA career, because you've hit on every aspect of the club side of the business and the playing side of the business. And you come from a very athletic family. Your dad was a really good ball player. In fact, he came out of a great area that in that South Chicago area that our families are from, where you had him, Gerby, Billy Anderson, and Uncle Danny Glumac. And I think you played baseball too, didn't you?
Yeah, I was a baseball player. I played baseball in college. I spent my last 3 years at Southern Illinois when we had a very, very good base. We were actually ranked 13th and 14th my last 2 years. Went to the NCAA tournament my junior year, and then I can't remember what we lost in the conference championship. But we won the conference championship my junior year. I was a baseball player. I really didn't get into golf until the end of my junior year. And then that's when my parents joined Olympia Fields. And so, I'd come home, and in between working and playing summer ball and all that stuff, I'd occasionally go out there. But I really didn't get into golf until I graduated. I didn't get drafted, had shoulder surgery. And I'm like, wow, you play sports your whole life. Now what? So I was working at a bank. And, I'd be out of the bank early. I'd go and play out there. And back then, there was nobody there. And I would say that when my parents were out there, I tell people this all the time, I was probably a 12 handicap,
mm-hmm.
And I just got tired of getting my brains beat in by all these guys. And I just worked at it and worked at it and worked at it and got better. And, I used to hit it a mile back then. And just got into the game because it was the only sport that I really got into. I didn't do anything else sports-wise. And I think, God, it was probably 5 or 6 years later, after doing a bunch of different jobs and stuff. The guy who lived next to me in college, in the apartment next to us, was a PGM guy and working at Amelia Island Plantation, and said, hey, I can get you a job at this place called Golf Club of Amelia Island, which is now it was a Summer Beach, which is now Golf Club of Amelia Island, at the Ritz-Carlton on Amelia Island. And I went down there and took a job and only knew one person on the island. And, like the rest of us back in, the late 80s, I was 6 days a week, $13,000 a year.
Right. Working for tips.
Yeah.
Whatever you could
just
get.
Grinding. Trying to learn how to learn the business, learn the game, and went through the whole I never really wanted to be a PGA pro. I was just always trying to find an avenue to be able to see if I could play for a living.
Mm-hmm.
And then, you blink and it's 35 years later. And, I tried to do both. So I went from there to a place at the time, the PGA Tour, the TPC network had 2 public golf courses. One was in Miami and the other one was in Jacksonville. And it was right next to the NAS Jacksonville Air Force Base. And I got hired by a guy named John Rieger, who was a longtime North Florida section president, very well-known guy. And we were at this public golf course. And I mean, that of all the places I worked at, that was obviously the lowest end, most brutal job I ever had. And I think I learned more there than anywhere because, boy, it was a factory. And I mean, we had a lit driving range, so you'd be there till 10:30 at night. And I mean, just grinding, for everything. But it taught me a lot because I saw the whole spectrum. And it was really cool. I can't remember if it was which war it was, but when you went on our second hole, it kind of paralleled one of the landing strips, and the NAS Jacksonville, they would do touchdowns. So these jets would go practice like they were landing on a carrier.
Mm-hmm.
And if you went out there late at night, it was really cool to watch all these jets go down and pull up, go down and pull up. And that's what they were practicing. Yeah, kind of a cool place.
Because they have to hit full acceleration, don't they, as soon as they land, in case the cable doesn't grab?
Yes, exactly. Yeah, so it was really cool. And then, at sunset, you could see the jet, the engines. It was really, really a fascinating place. Middle of nowhere on the way west end of Jacksonville. And then the guy John Rieger, ended up getting the job running a place called Hale Plantation in Gainesville. Which was the interesting course. It was a Gary Player design, 6 par 3s, 6 4s, and 6 5s. So I used to love that. So I went and opened that with him. And then when he left, I didn't get the job to replace him, and I ended up going out. It was funny. I told young kids this story who are in the business. I said, and this is an absolute truth story. Guy that was there was the Hogan rep in Hawaii. And when I told him I wasn't staying, he said, "Well, you have any interest in going to Hawaii?" And I'm like, "Sure." Single. Everything I owned, I could put in my car. So, sent my resume, and I sent my resume on a Tuesday, and no kidding, by the following Monday, I was in Hawaii.
Jeez.
And I remember it like it was yesterday. A guy named Bruce Glasgow, who worked for much after that, and has been with Troon for a very long time, met me at the airport. And Kapalua did a really cool thing when you came out there. They basically handed you a check for basically 2 paychecks in advance when you got there, just so you had enough money to afford to survive, because it was that expensive to live there. So I worked there for a year and a half, which was awesome. Worked at the plantation course, got to run the tournament 1 year. Met a lot of good friends. Matter of fact, I still have, a guy named Jason Lamp, who's the director of golf at Galloway National, Bruce Glasgow, a guy named Tom Kelly, who's the Adidas rep in Philly. They're still, 3 of my dear friends. So I enjoyed my time over there. Never been back. And then Bruce got the job opening a place called Maroon Creek in Aspen. And I ended up going there 6 months later and working out there, which that was, I could sit here and tell you some stories about that club, which, can I tell one?
Yeah, you can tell as many as you want to. It's like I said in the beginning, it's my show. You can talk as long as you want and tell any story you want to.
So I love telling the story. Anytime I go somewhere, if people ask me these questions, I'm like, all right, listen, I could name drop forever on the people that were members at Maroon Creek. Now you're talking 25 years ago, $150,000 to join. Dues were well over, it was so much money. It was silly. We had 7 billionaires. I mean, it was just between the New York billionaires and LA people, movie stars. And it was a really, really cool place to be. And Jack Nicholson was a member there, right? Mm-hmm. Who is as odd and as eccentric as anybody ever. There's nothing fictitious about that. Super nice guy, never really talked to anybody, but never was ever, never in the way, just never really talked to anybody. So he was very good friends with the pro who ran the public course right across the gorge there, and one of our backroom guys, believe it or not. So they play the public course, one day. They get done, and they're standing in the parking lot, and Nicholson goes to this guy, George Sanat. He says, "George, why don't you go in and see if you can get us a tee time tomorrow? Let's play again tomorrow." George walks in there. Guy at the counter says, and this place was a factory. He says, "We got 8 o'clock and 3 p.m. He goes, great, we'll take the 8 o'clock. So he walks back out and tells the guys, great, I got us a tee time at 8 o'clock. And he basically looks at everyone. Mickelson pulls his sunglasses down in that twang he has. He says, George, you got to pay me $100,000 an hour to get me up at 8 o'clock. Puts his sunglasses back up, gets in his car, and takes off. Basically, that was him, man. Yep. So he used to bring Barkley out all the time and play. That was a fascinating crew.
That's like the odd couple.
Oh man, they used to gamble. I mean, they were gambling fiends. And Don Johnson was a member. He was a really nice guy. But bar none, my favorite celebrity, superstar, mega personality that I'd ever met was Glenn Fry from the Eagles.
Mm-hmm.
Glenn was a member there. He was an absolute golf nut. He just could not be a nicer person. Treated everybody there like gold. Was just a wonderfully nice guy. I got to play in his. They used to bring a lot of pros there playing this charity event. I got to play in that a couple times. But he used to come in the fall, and he'd always jump on the phone and make his bets on Sundays for the football games. And we still. And his, everybody who's got a book, he's got a tag name. His tag name was Elvis. He always go, hey, this is Elvis. Give me, so it was great.
I'll tell you a funny story about him. I was working, they were doing their Get Back Together tour. This had to be in the mid-'90s. And I was working at Sea Pines Plantation. And I get this call about 9 o'clock in the morning. And the guy says, hey, we got a tee time there at, 10:30. Where are you located at? And Sea Pines is a big place. It's got a lot of timeshares and rentals. I said, where are you staying? He says, the Monarch timeshare. I said, okay. You're literally 300 yards down the street. Come out of your place, turn left, and walk 300 yards, and you'll walk right into us. Okay, fine. So hour later, here comes this guy. He's checking in, and I'm checking him in. I say, oh, you're the guy that just called. I said, is it difficult to get here, wasn't it? Just kind of jerking him around. And he says, yeah, we got in a little late last night. And I'm just making conversation with him. I said, oh, really? Where'd you guys come from? He said, well, we're up in Columbia, South Carolina. Said, what are you guys doing up there? He said, well, we were in this concert. And I knew not much about music. I listened to it. I didn't know bands, names of rockers or anything like that. I mean, I played all sports growing up and never hardly listened to music unless it was on the radio. So his guys are laughing behind him, or starting to. And he said, yeah, we got this little band that we play in, that we had this concert. And I said, oh, really? I said, you ever play anything I would have heard of? And he says, well, yeah. You ever hear Hotel California? I'm like, yeah, that's a good song. That's you guys? He's like, yeah. And I said, what's the name? He goes, Glenn Fry. I was like, oh, that's pretty cool. His guys are rolling because, I mean, they realized I wasn't just playing with him. I was serious. I had no idea who he was. Not a clue.
Oh, that's awesome.
And he said the reason we didn't know where we were was because we didn't get in until 3 o'clock in the morning. And I mean, guys, the guy I'm working with and the girl are kicking me, laughing their ass off too. And they left. And I said, I honestly had no idea who Glenn Fry was. But he loved it. He's like, that's cool, kid. He said, thanks for not just kissing my ass. But yeah, he was a cool guy.
He was. I remember asking him when he got rid of the so Danny Sullivan used to be the main guy. Danny Sullivan I think he won Indy. So, but anyway, big race car guy. It was his event, and then he couldn't do it anymore. And so Glenn took it over. And I remember asking him, like, after the year after he got rid of it, I'm like, hey, why'd you get rid of it? He said, you know why? When you do these things, all you do is ask tour players and friends and celebrities, hey, can you come? Can you help? Blah, blah, blah. And most of them will say yes. The problem is, he said, when they say yes to you, you have to say yes to their stuff. And I am tired of going to all these events because it's exhausting. So I just put an end to it, and I stopped asking people for favors.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I get it. But yeah, it was cool. I mean, they used to, God, when I was there, I mean, Tiger played, Norman played, David Duval. It was a big event. They raised, I mean, again, the money, the auction, they used to auction off who you'd play with. So, there was just so much money there. It was insane. I talked to my old roommate, who was a tennis pro at Maroon Creek, and now he's been selling real estate at a place called River Valley Ranch that I actually built and developed and helped start the golf course when Crown Golf owned it. And he told me last week. So when I was there, and we were there, Aspen just hit where there was not a house under $1 million. The average sale price in 2020 was $11.2 million.
Holy shit.
Yeah. So anyway, we built a golf course called River Valley Ranch down valley in a town called Carbondale. So really beautiful golf course right by Mount Cypress is a big, beautiful mountain. And so anyway, so I went from Maroon Creek. And then at Maroon Creek, I started to go in the winters down to Orlando, and I worked this is a fascinating story. So I was working at Grand Cypress, just on the academy, being a complete grunt, picking balls because I can hit balls all I wanted.
Mm-hmm.
And I was a range rat. And I'm standing on the putting green, and a guy named Paul Alexander comes up to me, who worked there. And he said, "Hey, do you have any interest in going to play in South America?" And, me being a Southside kid, I'm like, I honestly don't even know where South America is, to be honest with you. I'm like, what do you mean? He goes, well, my brother and I were going on this tour to play in the South American tour, and my brother Carl can't go, and he already forked over whatever it was, $4,000 or $5,000. I think it was a 6-week trip, right? And he cut me a break, and I'm like, and this was like whatever, like on a Wednesday. He's like, when are we leaving? I'm like, oh, you got to be out of Miami Airport on Friday. I'm like, Jesus. And I'm like, yeah, sure. I mean, again, I'm like, and so for anybody obviously in the golf world, Paul and Carl Alexander have been golf pros. Their father, Jules, is the famous photographer who took all those Hogan photos, Jules Alexander.
Mm-hmm.
And they were raised at Wingfoot. I'm not sure what Paul is now. Carl's been at one of those really, really glamorous places in Long Island for a while. Anyway, so I went over there, and it was like 32 guys. There was a guy named Jeff Lewis, who's a mini tour legend that used to run this whole tour. And man, I went over there 5 straight winners. And, I actually got an exemption into the second stage of the British Open qualifying one year because I think I finished 8th in the money list or something. And so I went over there to do that. But I loved it over there. I just absolutely loved it. And then if you played well enough, there was another series where you get invited into these 4 invitationals. So, if you made that, you'd go over there. But I did that.
How long after that you went to Amelia Island, that you kind of just got into golf? How long was that time frame between when you left the Chicago area, got into golf 100%, and then when you're playing the South American Tour and playing really well?
Let me do some quick math. So you got to figure 2, 3, 4, 7 years.
So you had a rapid advancement to go from basically beginner to 12 handicap.
Yeah. And I mean, again, I had and I had exactly what like a raw athlete would have had in high school. I just didn't do it in high school. I took it up later in life. And again, the things that I obviously struggled with when I was really good, I drove the ball a mile, actually hit it pretty straight. For a guy, when I was really, really good, I hit it as far as anybody, if not further than anybody. And I hit it straight. I always hit a nice cut, still do. But I always drove it well, hit incredible irons. And like everybody, I just struggled with wedges, and I was a very mediocre putter. And what's fascinating now is my short game is unbelievable. I'd sit there and hit pitch shots and chip with anybody in the world and not flinch. And it's amazing when I stopped playing golf, how much better of a putter I became when you take the expectations and free your mind up, how well you can putt.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm actually a really, really, if I putted back then like I do now, I have no doubt how to play it on tour because I was that good of a ball striker. And primarily the guy that helped me was that guy, Brian Gathright. When I was in Aspen, I have very good friends, the Bufords, Beth and R.C. Buford. R.C. is the general manager of the Spurs, now the president of the Spurs, right? So I had met them in Gainesville, still very good friends with them. they basically told me, if you want to advance and you want to become a world-class player, you should go work with our friend Brian Gathright. And that's what I did. I'd go down and see Brian, and that's where I was. I was there 4 weeks ago, down working with Brian at Cordillera Ranch out in Bernie, Texas, outside of San Antonio. I talk to him all the time and work with him, and him and a guy named Mark Winkley are the two main guys who made me a world-class player at times. So that really, he's the one who taught me how to chip and pitch, and who's, just such an incredible teacher of the short game. And so when I put that, by the time I went to South America, I had that in my bag, and it was just a matter of how well I putted. If I putted well, I never shot, sniffed shooting over par. But like all the guys that struggle with the putter, it just sometimes just wears on you.
Yeah, it works its way back from green to tee when it gets really bad. I mean, you think you got to hit it 5 feet to make, or else you're not going to make it, and then that puts pressure on your irons. And if you don't hit the fairway, it's hard to hit it to 5 feet. And it just, I hear you loud and clear on that one.
Yeah, and I was always a tremendous 4-foot par putter and an atrocious 6-foot birdie putter.
Mm-hmm.
And when you're a good ball striker, you drive it far. I mean, you have so many wedges and so many birdie opportunities. I'd be hitting 14, 15, 16 greens and shooting even par or something. It just wears on you. And then you watch these guys who slap it all over the planet and make everything. And believe me, it does. And I feel bad for guys. I watch it on tour. I'm like, wow, you could just see it, and then but that's the game. It really is, I mean, the reason Tiger was greatest player for a long stretch is because he made everything.
Right. Jordan Spieth made everything in his run.
Yeah, Jordan Spieth can't break an egg now because he doesn't make everything, and he's the worst driver of the golf ball out there. So Jimmy Walker, who worked with Brian, one of the best putters for a very long time. When that stuff starts to wane, boy, it's especially for guys who relied on it. You know what I mean? So
when you met
tough.
Brian, what were some of the things that he did with your game outside of the? We'll get into the chipping and some of the details, but what did he do with your overall game, and what did he do with your swing, if anything?
He would refine my overall swing. And it's funny, we still go into this, that, when I don't, obviously like everybody, let the left shoulder turn and rotate enough, I'll lift, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that was one thing. And then I always cut the ball. So it was really learning how to keep the face open and turn left and really clear into my left side. And, I would just hit these high moonbeam cuts, and they were great. But he didn't do much. Brian's really an expert at taking what you're good at and refining it and not really messing it if it's not bad. But what he taught me how to do was really, and this is where I think if anybody ever listens to this, and if anybody wants their kids to learn the game of golf, and I still do this when I occasionally not teach, but I'll sit out there and try and help people. And the way I try and teach and educate is, do you have any idea how the club works with the ball? Because most people don't. And he taught me how the wedge works, how the bounce works, using the way it's designed, not fighting it, thinking that you have enough athleticism and hand coordination to do what you want, fighting the elements of the ball and the wedge and the grass and the lie, right? All of that. And that's the skill, because there's the most athletic thing we do is putt. There's no athleticism in that. And he used to always say, I'll take a 60-year-old woman, never played golf before. You give me a sandwich around the greens and practice for 2 months, I'll make her a good chipper. Because it doesn't take any strength. It doesn't take any strength. Okay. Analyze the lie, analyze the club face, so on and so forth. He's a big believer too in one of the things we worked on a couple of weeks ago, not overhinging your wrists and adding loft and adding all those elements. So setting that angle. So Mark Winkley believes in that too, and holding that angle, but making sure that you're actually pivoting on your short game and not just kind of picking it up. And that's kind of where me and a lot of other people will get stuck, is you'll try and rely on your hands too much. And it's not. It's just a micro swing. And boy, it's just amazing the difference it makes. And it really makes it so simple. But that's where he took me. So all of a sudden, I've always hit it well. I'm hitting it just as good, if not better. Now I'm hitting pitch shots and lob shots and bump and runs and this and that. And I had all of that. So it was really hard for me to ever play bad. I never played bad. It was just a matter of how good I was going to play based on how I putted. And I've never lost that. Even when I don't play, I went, 3-4 years, didn't play much at all. Never lost the technique with chipping and all that stuff. And I was a great bunker player, so but yeah, he's a brilliant guy with learning and teaching people how the ball and the club work. And most people never understand it. And if you don't understand it, how can you fix it?
You had mentioned using the bounce, and you're right. So many people have no idea of what that means. Can you give a little deeper explanation on what your understanding of or non-understanding of that was before you got with him, and then how he taught you or what he taught you about that interaction?
Yeah, it's been a long time, but I'll still even use the best I can to basically, when you watch people that struggle with the wedge, and we're going to talk about, inside 20, 30, 40 yards, they're always trying to manipulate the head of that club to the ball to make it do what they think it's going to do, right?
Right.
And in essence, of course, it causes a throw, and they're trying to move that head. And what they don't understand is the way that wedge is designed, again, is to, and hence the term bounce, is to literally come down and bounce through the ground under the ball and have that ball roll up that face, hit the face correctly. And if you're throwing and moving the head to the ball, it's never going to do that. It's either going to bottom out behind or it's going to lift up, and you're going to always be hitting the ball on the way up, almost a semi-skull or whatever the case may be. And, I try and get people when I kind of try and explain this to them, it's so much easier when you're standing there is, put the club in your right hand, okay, and have them hit little pitch shots with one hand, because you'll watch them. They'll try and pick it up, and they'll try and throw it, and they'll get it. I'm like, no, let the club do the work, And Jim Flick taught me something a long time ago, which was brilliant. He used to take the wedge, he'd hold it out in front of him, straight out, and pinch it with his two fingers, and he'd push it, and he'd move it like a metronome, right? Like a clock, the arm swinging. And he says the wedge works with gravity. And if you allow the gravity to move the head down through the ball and let it work naturally, okay, that club will go down, bounce down through the grass, up, and the ball will come out perfectly. He used to say this: if you add speed to the head, you're manipulating with your hands. That was his term. Don't add speed to the head. If you want more speed, make a bigger swing. But that was a great little, the little kind of metronome. And I still do that a lot with people. I'm like, that's how the wedge works. Let it work. That's what the bounce is for. It'll go down, it'll go through, it'll come up. So I guess that's my way of explaining it. I'm sure there's other people who can explain it better, but not manipulating the head to make the ball do what you want it to do is the best way I can explain it, so.
Well, keeping it simple probably helps a lot too. I mean, you get some of these people.
Be athletic. The best teachers I've been to, and I've been to a lot of them, man, when I was working in the business, I went and saw everybody. I wanted to learn the swing. I wanted to get better. But I also, wanted to be able to teach so I could make more money. But not growing up a golf kid, not growing up in the industry, again, we didn't know anything about golf. Nothing. My parents weren't golfers. I'm not a country club kid. My dad joined because his business did well and he needed to entertain, and that was it. But he wasn't a golfer. I always tell people, I'm not a golfer. I'm an athlete who learned how to play golf well. And I watch so many guys that are athletes lose their athleticism. I'm like, what are you doing? Be an athlete. Stand like an athlete. God made you tall. Be tall. It's amazing how, with that ball being still, how good athletes lose their minds and forget how to be athletic.
Do you think that the mindset of being an athlete and is what drove you to? Because if a college pitcher that just graduated or been out of school a few years and was a good pitcher, came to anybody and said, "Hey, I'm a 12 handicap, but I'm going to play pro golf in 7 years from now," most people would laugh at him, even today. So was it the athlete and competitive mindset that you had that said, I'm going to do this and no one's going to tell me I can't"?
Yeah, well, two things. One, I never told anybody because I never tell anybody what my desires are. And I've always been an incredibly demonstrative person when it came to working at things that I wanted to be good at.
Mm-hmm.
I did it with everything, and football and baseball, and I was a better football player than baseball player. So I just wanted, and I go back to that group of people at Olympia Fields that just beat the crap out of me every Saturday and Sunday. And you're an athlete your whole life. You're used to being successful. And that's why I put all of that passion into. There's no way that these guys should be beating me. I don't care that they played in college. I don't care that they played their whole lives. I'm going to get better. And so I did. And then I got better. And then all of a sudden I'm like, well, how do I get you're a 4 or a 5 or 6. Well, what, you start going, what's the flaw? It always comes down to the same thing. Short game, be more refined, drive the ball better, be consistent, but short game solves everything. It always cures the ills of a bad day or a bad shot. And but I did, I whatever you want to call it, desire, drive, ego, tired of losing but I had this weird belief. I used to tell Brian all the time, I always worked 2-3 times harder because I felt like I had to make up the ground for not playing golf when I was a kid. And so I'd go out there when I go to San Antonio and work with him, I'd get out there when he did, and I would leave when he did at night. And because I just always felt like I had to make up that lost time, and if you listen to guys like Rotella, they'll tell you that's the worst thing you could have ever done. What does he call it? Middle-class white man's disease, something like that. I think that's what Rotella calls it. He goes, yeah, just work harder. And sometimes it's not the answer. So, but, I didn't know any better back then. I just figured, I'll just hit 1,000 balls a day.
When you went
I still love it.
When you went to Mealy Island, was the focus on getting better, or that was opportunity for you to continue your pursuit to go from a single digit now to scratch and even beyond, or was it, or was it duality of, I can go down there and see how good I can get, and I can have a job at the same time, and then your career just the tide of your career carried you to different places to allow both to continue to develop?
Yeah, I never had the desire to be a PGA pro. I just never. I always went down there to see if I could play, see if I can get better. It was the best avenue. You're at a golf course, practice for free, play for free, blah, blah, blah. And then eventually, if you're going to do it, you're making the money. I guess you make no money. So you're like, well, I might as well go. If I'm going to do this work, going back then, being in the PGA program was easy. You just signed up, and then you had to go to these, 4-day schools, take the test. So it wasn't like now where it's real work.
Right.
So you had to be able to pass a test. So I'm like, well, what's the point? They're paying your dues, they're paying your stuff. Might as well do it. I knew that it wouldn't hurt me, but I always at every step, wanted to play, wanted to be a great player. And what could I do to get to the right places? And, again, for any young assistant or anybody, and the guys who work for me, I guess I was fortunate that when I was going through all that, I was single. I didn't really spend any money on anything because all my money spent was on golf. And I was very good at meeting people and networking, and being a good player helps. Don't let anybody tell you that doesn't help. It opens doors, it opens avenues. But coming from a family that owned businesses, I was very good around business people. I knew how to talk to them. I knew how to engage them. So that opened so many avenues for me. And I took advantage of them. Again, it was in Hawaii in less than 7 days. Met everybody out there. It was in Maroon Creek. And then that's how I just somehow always got better opportunities, because I took the time to meet people, network. People love good players. They like good teachers. And, and I worked it. because that's the job. But not being tied down, I could leave on a whim and go move from Hawaii to Colorado to Florida to Arizona to Palm Springs and, all these places. And I just don't think young assistants and young kids have that mentality anymore. If they do, it just opens up a lot more doors for you. So
you when you did the South American tour and you played well, did you go on a continuation or did you go back to Orlando and then back to working in the range or back to Colorado and working in the pro
No,
shop?
so yeah, by that finished, I was ready to go back. No, I was going back to Colorado. So in the summers, I was working out there and then going to South America. And then I'd raised enough money to go play full time. So I went and played full time. And I told myself, and this was a mistake, I shouldn't have done this. I told myself I was giving myself 5 years to either get on tour or, what time was it, Nike or whatever it was. And, but I did. I traveled year round, spent my winters in Florida so I could go to South America, went to tour schools, and then just did the whole, I'd always come out here actually to Boston. And because I met so many really cool people in South America, and one of the guys I'm still very good friends with, a guy named Dave Schuster, they convinced me to come out here, and I would play in the Vermont Open and try and qualify for the Mass Open. And there was a couple events in Maine, and it was really cool start to the season. So I would start out east and then work my way back to the Midwest, Illinois Opens, and then I played a couple summers on the Dakotas tour.
They used to have that followed the tour back then. They used to have the Waterloo Open, and then was it the Iowa? There were the two back to back.
Yeah, so there were actually three of them: Cedar Rapids,
yes,
Waterloo, Iowa Open, and I played in those every year. Played really well in those and loved it out there. That was great. Those were great events, great people. I mean, and another great event I used to go to was in Garden City, Kansas. So Garden City, Kansas had this great Pro-Am. We played at the Country Club, and then you played at the Muni course. And the Muni course was phenomenal. So you want to hear a funny story about that? So we're out in Garden City, Kansas. My now wife, who at the time, we were dating, she was off from, she was going to be a nurse anesthetist, so she was going to University of Kansas. So somehow, wherever I picked her up along the way, whatever the case may be. So we're out in Garden City, Kansas. Now, I'll tell you the end of this will make you realize it. So we're standing out there playing a practice round. And when I tell you that the stink and the smell was unlike anything we've ever smelled, on a scale of 1 to 10, it was a 50 of a bad smell, right? So my wife turns around, looks at this woman, and she goes, "What in God's name is that smell?" And the lady goes in her Kansas accent, she goes, "That's the smell of money, honey." She goes, "What do you mean?" Garden City, Kansas is the slaughterhouse capital of the world. And there's a blood pit where all the the blood from these cattle go, and the stink and the shit and everything. And when that wind blows the wrong direction in Garden City, Kansas, I'm telling you, meet anybody who's been there, they will tell you that is a smell unlike anything you've ever smelled. And it was unbelievable. So my wife and I still tell that story about Garden City, Kansas. So, but a great, again, great golf tournament, middle of the country, just, great people, always welcoming to guys like us. And let's face it, guys playing in that, mostly were, schlubs trying to get their cards and, just battling the grind. But, the one year, the guy I met was a really nice kid, was Joe Ogilvy. He played in South America when he got out of Duke. And then he played the Dakotas tour one year with us. And Joe was a nice guy. He's a very, very smart kid. But yeah, so again, I did that and grinded on that. And after 5 years, I should have kept going, but I didn't. I quit. I said, that's enough. And then didn't know what to do. And called my buddy Bruce Glasgow and said, "Hey, is Troon hiring?" And interviewed got hired to go work as the head pro running in Palm Springs, the Weston Mission Hills. And this is, fascinating. I get hired. 2 weeks later, 9/11 hits.
Ooh.
And they, halt, not only lay everybody off, but halt everybody. So I ended up going out and working, going to Arizona, waiting till they would rehire me or start working at Hornacek Golf Club, golf shop. Remember Jeff Hornacek,
Right.
the basketball
player?
Yeah, he owned two like little retail golf shops. So I worked in one of those just to pass the time until I went to go work out for a guy named Bill O'Brien running the Weston Mission Hills. So I was out there for a year and a half. Now, I got to tell you this story because this is probably one of my best golf stories that I can tell to the public, and this one's the best. So I'm running the two golf courses with this guy, and at the main course by the hotel, beautiful driving range. And if you've ever been out there, there's a million homes when it used to be all landmark property. And so this guy walks in, older, refined gentleman, introduces himself. They're both members. Him and his buddy are members at the private club, which by golf cart was, a 10-minute drive, but it's all connected. And he said, I would like to ask you for a favor. And I said, sure. His name was Mo Muscatel. And I said, Mo, what is the favor? He said, can my friend Bob hit balls on the back of the range because Bob had rectal cancer and it was too far of a drive and he wanted to be close to his house in case he had to run back for anything, go to the bathroom or whatever. I said, of course you can. Those two men became just so dear friends to me. They were so nice to me, super successful, knew everybody, right? So, months into this, all of a sudden, Bob Hope's coming out there. And this guy, Bob, says, hey, I'm very good friends with John Daly. I'm one of the guys who tried to mentor him to get him off his gambling and put his life, in the right direction. And I have a question. Can you ask a guy named Bill Feather, the general manager of the whole property, if there's any way he can park the bus, right, at the resort, while he's staying here and use in the practice range? I'm like, wow. I said, I'll ask. And I went to Bill and said, hey, Bill, here's the request. And Bill said, sure, I don't care. But the only thing is he needs to sign a bunch of hats, balls, whatever we ask for the employees.
Mm-hmm.
And sure enough, he did, right? Pulls up, loads the thing, sets it all up. Middle of the back end of the parking lot. Bring a bunch of stuff. Couldn't have been nicer. Signed everything. He's on the back of the range every day, talking to people. Couldn't be nicer. He actually took me to a practice round at, I can't think of the private club, and I played a practice round before the event, before practice rounds, with him and Pat Perez. How about that? Right?
Perez is nuts.
He was, that nice of a guy. So here's the story. He's there 3 or 4 days. I'm coming into work, and as I'm driving into work, I get the call from the maintenance guy who runs the whole facility, and he is MFing me like nothing you could ever imagine. Well, this knucklehead, Daly, decides, went out gambling, lost a ton of money, for whatever reason, comes back at the hotel 2 a.m. and decides he's going to unload his shitter in the parking lot.
No. Clark, shitter's full.
Shitter's full. So instead of taking it where they're supposed to, he just decides that he is going to hit the thing and unload all of that chemical, all of the shit, all of the pee in the fucking parking lot. And when this guy pulls in, when the sun comes up, there is a, semi-lake of just blue algae and shit sitting in the parking lot.
Oh, God.
And
what was he thinking?
What were you thinking? Yeah, what were you thinking? Well, first he was drunk. And, probably oh, my God. So that's what he did. So he dumped the whole, it's just, I never lived that one down. So Bob tells a great story about him, though. Bob was at his, I think, 23rd wedding in Vegas. And John was playing $1,000 pull slots. And he hits one for $1 million.
Holy shit.
And hits one and this is on his wedding. And he calls Bob and says, Bob, I need you to do me a favor. I've got $1 million in cash here. I'm going to put it in the suitcase. I'm going to put it in the suitcase. They're going to give you a limo. They were staying at MGM, and you're going to take it over to Caesars, and you're going to pay off a piece of my markers, right? Bob's like, are you out of your mind? He goes, no, seriously, go ahead. So they call over there. He said he's in the back of the limo, like hugging the suitcase, like he's going to get robbed, right? So he walks in, goes in with the suitcase, goes right to the cage and introduces himself and says, I am here. I'm going to give you $1 million. I want you to pay it down on John Daly's marker. Lady's like, are you out of your mind? Big hassle, big ruckus. One of the big, executives comes out and says, you need to tell Mr. Daly that he needs to come here and do this himself. Bob calls him up, and Daly says, put the guy on the phone. The guy gets on the phone. He says, this is exactly what he said. He says, hey, buddy, I'm not coming. You either take the money or he's bringing the money back, and you're probably never going to see it again. He took the money. But Bob was actually the guy that negotiated a lot of his gambling debts down so he could pay him off over time. Bob was a very successful, wealthy guy, and he was just a cool guy to meet. One of those people you meet along the way that you're so happy that you met somebody like him.
Mm-hmm. Was Martin Chuck out in Palm Springs when you were there?
I don't think Martin was there yet. He could have been, but I don't remember ever meeting him or knowing him. No, I don't know that. So, and then, so I went from there to moving to Boston in 2003 and opening, brand new Herds and Fry golf course called Turner Hill in Ipswich, Mass, which is 18 miles north of the city of Boston.
I was in between my playing stints in 2002, and then I went back in 2005. And in that time frame, I worked at Berkeley Hall here in Bluffton. And there was a guy, I remember when you got that job, because there was a guy that became a member there. He bought a lot or a house or something, and he had Ipswich, Massachusetts on his bag. And I said, hey, you don't happen to know of a new club up there named Turner Hill, do you? He said, yeah, I'm about to join. And I said, well, George Goich, the director of golf. And he said, oh, I love George. So
who it was?
It was Dave DeBruni is his name. Dave's got to be 80 now. I hope he's still around. I haven't seen him in a long time. After I left there in 2005 to go back to play. I think he joined. He was the one that told me when the club was having some financial problems a few years later.
Yeah.
When it hit that skid from the original development.
Yeah.
And I was back to playing and focused on that stuff, and I just lost track of that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's still. Yeah, they finally. I can go on for hours about that place, but that was when I got there, man, there were maybe 13 members, and then when I left, there were almost 300.
Because that was touted and was one of the premier clubs in that area, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's such a beautiful property. So Dana Fry, who has played the top 100 courses in the world, and I'm sure you can dig this up. I mean, he is quoted as saying that Turner Hill has the best entrance in golf, right? And I tell people this. They're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, look, Augusta is beautiful, but it's 100 yards. It's 200 yards. It's nothing.
Mm-hmm.
When you come into Turner Hill, so Turner Hill was built on an old 2,000-acre estate. The home was a summer home for this rich family, the Rice family. It's a what is it? I don't know how many thousand square feet. It's a mansion. It's gigantic. And so the whole golf course and the whole property is kind of built around this old 1908 mansion. But when you come in the property, you come in and you go a little bit, then you turn left. And as you drive maybe, 300-400 yards, you come across and you go across these lakes, and there's the mansion. Then you go drive all the way around. So it's a long ride. I mean, it's a good, I don't know, three-quarters of a. I mean, it's a long drive, and it's really beautiful. I mean, it makes it really cool. And it's a nice golf course. I mean, he did a nice job. Very, very difficult property with the wetlands and the homes, and the homes aren't everywhere, but they're enough where very hilly. But he did a nice job with it. stuck in the middle of Ipswich, Massachusetts. So, but just a beautiful property. In the fall, it's just spectacular because you're up high and the leaves change. So yeah, that was fun. Dana was a nice guy. I used to go down and play a lot of Calusa Pines in their event because Dana had just got done with Calusa Pines, and he actually built my favorite golf course in New England called Shelter Harbor at the same time he built Turner Hill. And the golf pro at Shelter Harbor is one of my favorite people, a guy named Dave Tiedemann. And that's just a pure golf club, par 3, 18 holes, par 3 course, just spectacular property. That's a really, really good golf course.
So what you went from, you were basically playing full time and then you segued back into the club side. What was the story that I only remember bits and pieces, but when you showed up there in that Boston area, and there was something didn't you go to some inner club and just wipe the grounds with everybody? You shot something ridiculously low.
Oh, no. So the very first member I met is a guy named Dr. McKeon, Brian McKeon, and he likes to say world famous doctor. Brian is an orthopedic surgeon, very well regarded orthopedic surgeon, and was just recently retired as the head doctor of the Celtics. Brian's a golf nut. Mm-hmm. So Brian was friends with these guys, and they used to play at a place called Hatherley, which is in Scituate, Massachusetts. And the pro there is just a great guy and a great player named Chip Johnson. Chip's brother, Steve, played on the Nationwide and Nike for a very long time. Played at Clemson. I can't remember where Chip played. Anyway, great player. So, as I get to meet Brian, he could talk about his Chip Johnson. Oh, Chip Johnson. If you were as good as Chip Johnson could beat you, blah, 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 blah. Just sick of this guy. So I'm like, well, we'll set up a game. Fine, set up a game. We'll get 4 of us to go play Chip, and I, had never met, I met Chip, but never really know him, right? So he sets this game up. Hadley's a 110-year-old golf course, very short golf course, but tricky little greens, so on and so forth. So I'd never seen the place. Get out there, par of the first hole, birdie the second hole, par of the third hole, and all of a sudden, birdie, just birdie, par, birdie. So I'm cruising along. And I'm not, again, you talk about in the zone, right? So I hit one about 2 feet and missed the putt. And the Keegan gives me shit. So I go to the next hole and I birdie it. Then I go to, I think it was 15. 15's a long par 3. And I hit it up there like, whatever, I don't know, 10, 12 feet. And I leave my putt kind of short. And, again, we're playing a big money game. So I just kind of rake it in. And he goes ballistic. Brian goes ballistic. I'm like, dude, why are you so upset? Like, calm down. Jesus Christ. Like, do you have any idea what's going on? I'm like, no, not really, man. But, I'm just playing golf and, basically shut the fuck up. Right. So I'm like, try not to top. When Brian tells the story, I go, yeah. And I looked at you and said, do me a favor. Try not to top one more drive. Okay. So we get on the 16th hole, probably the hardest hole in the golf course. And I pipe one right down the middle. And all Brian says is, oh, you shouldn't have hit it there. I'm like, it's right down the middle. He goes, oh, just watch. And it trickles. It runs left, and goes right into the marsh. I'm like, what the? Like, yeah, everybody knows you got to hit it like 500 yards right of that, and it'll come back in the fairway. So I'm like, oh, God. So that was my best hole on the round. So anyway, I wedge it up, chip it on, make par. So now, that was 16. So now we're standing on 17. And the group looks at me and they go, do you want to know what's going on? And I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, what are you guys, what's going on? Because you're acting like a bunch of fucking assholes. They're like, you realize you're 9 under par. I'm like, no, I really had no idea I was 9 under par. And if you make one more birdie, you'll break the course record. I'm like, oh, Christ. So I hit it up there, of course, missed it on 17. So, of course, by the time I get to 18, their clubhouse has an upper deck, and it's a par 3, and it overlooks the 18th green. And, Jesus, I don't know how many people are up there, right? So I get up there, and I hit it, an okay shot, but it's got to be 25, 30 feet. And sure enough, I knock it in and shoot 60. So, and as Chip Johnson likes to say, I'm the only guy who shoots 64 and lose by 4. So that's the story. Yeah. So yeah, that's my low round.
Yeah, that's pretty low. It doesn't get there's not many people who win a whole lot lower than that.
No. But it was fun. It was a fun day. And again, and Brian McKeon would love to tell you that, yeah, our best ball that day was 60.
I'd have to imagine you walked out there with a few bucks more than you got there with.
Yes. So, hang on, somebody's calling me. So yeah, that was fun. So, and Chip just could not be. I mean, again, for anybody that knows him, him and his brother are well known in the golf world. There just could be a nicer person.
You know, you've won a number of section events, mini tour things. I think you've played in the PGA National Club Pro, at least 10 times, 11 times or so?
No, I think this April is going to be, oh man, and don't quote me. I think it's 8, but what I played in a bunch of was before they went to this format, you'd qualify, then you'd go to your region. So there was 4 regions, right?
Yep.
And so I played in a bunch of regionals. Those were better events because those were real tournaments. It wasn't 400 guys to a cut to 62, right?
Right.
The
old way was much better.
Oh God, I don't know how many times I missed a cut by a shot. It's driven me nuts. But so yeah, I think this is 8. So not counting all those Western regionals. But it's fascinating. When I was in Hawaii, I qualified for the National Club Pro when I was in Hawaii, which was in Missouri, which it was miserable. Me and Bruce did, and it literally Lake of the Ozarks. It rained. I think it was barely. I don't even know if they got 36 holes in. It rained forever. It was miserable. But we went out to Bend, Oregon, to play in the one in Sun River, which is awesome. So I go out there, all these guys, a couple guys from Hawaii, and we play practice round. It's 82 degrees, blah blah blah. Get up the morning of the event. There's 2.5 inches of snow on the ground. It was unbelievable. I mean, it was worse than Aspen. It was like, because Aspen it'd snow in the morning, and then you'd be playing golf at 1:00. I'm like, holy! It was October. It went from like 80 to snowing. It was first round just got delayed the whole day because of snow. So,
have you played any other tours? I mean, you played South America. You played all the stuff around the U.S. How many?
No, I never.
Nike back then, I think it was, or anywhere else in the world at Euro.
No, I tried. I would always try the Monday qualifiers. I was the king of. I played in one in Cleveland. I played in the Deutsche Bank. That's my only tour event. Which I didn't play bad. I lost to VJ by 2 touchdowns. That wasn't bad. What else? No, that's really about it. But still, my biggest win ever was a pro scratch scramble in Maryville. That's still my biggest win.
The shit talking on that gets stretched out a lot longer than maybe say winning the Iowa or Waterloo Open. You might not see many of those guys that talk shit, but anything you win around the Maryville, you're probably going to see those guys for a long time.
No, do you know that tournament they used to have, the scratch scramble, the 1 pro 3 scratch scramble?
I heard of it, but I never I spent my whole professional PGA career basically in South Carolina, and never it was up there for any of that stuff.
Right. So when I left to go play and do all that stuff, I was okay. And then by the time I kind of came back, whatever it was, 5-6 years later, I was a completely different player. Mm-hmm. And all these guys from Indiana and stuff that were members of Olympia Fields are like, hey, you want to play in this tournament? And I'm like, yeah, it was always, I think, the first week of October. I'm like, sure. So it was me and 3 other guys, 3 really good players. And it was, big money, cash, Calcutta, all this stuff. So they put me in there, and everybody's bidding on teams and all this stuff, and literally nobody has a clue who I am. I haven't played anything. I've never played in Illinois and no one knew who I was. So we were the only guys to bet money on our own team. And as it turns out, the guy in my group, we chipped in on our 18th hole and won the event, and I won $16,000.
Whew. That's pretty good money back
we
then.
won everything. We won everything because we won 100% of the Calcutta. We won 100% of everything because not one other person besides us four bet on ourselves. So, yeah, that was that. So I tell people, what's your biggest win? Well, that was my biggest win, to be honest with you.
As far as your touring golf, how much did you rely on outside financing versus, say, having your dad's business help you at all?
My dad never gave me $1.
Is that right?
Yeah. I got my own sponsor when I was in Colorado. Mm-hmm. Now, I'll tell you, and I don't want to say this because I don't want anybody to ever say this to me. My parents helped me tremendously. My dad paid for my gas. I had a gas card. My parents would help me with anything that I needed, but I never went to my father and said, Dad, I need $40,000 to go play golf. I didn't do that. Mm-hmm. I never asked him for a penny. My older brother would give me some money once in a while, but I got some money from a guy in Aspen, and then I did use his money for 3 years, but then I just used all my own money. And I worked, my brothers and I worked for my father like dogs for a very long time. But no, I blew through all my own money. And, and that's why by the time I went back to work, I literally didn't have anything because I spent it all on golf. But yeah, no, my parents, I didn't think it was right. I just didn't feel comfortable with it. I thought that if I was going to be to what I wanted to be, I couldn't do that. My dad would have, he easily would have, but I just chose not to ask.
Yeah, I remember two stories about your brothers and your dad. One of them was Mike told me one time, and I forget how old he said he was, told me that you guys would work for him when you were young. And let's say he was 12 or 13. And your dad said, okay, and this was maybe a Saturday. Your dad said, I'm leaving tomorrow at 7 o'clock. If you want to go, be ready to go. And Mike said he got in the driveway. It was about 7:03, and your dad was gone. And he had never forgotten that. And that was probably 15 years, maybe 20 years ago. He told me. So Mike was about 30. So you figured 20 some years later. And he had not forgotten
to this day, if that happens. Yep. Still to this day, my brother and I will be out there at 6:40. My older brother, he might roll out there at about 9:15 and wonder where everybody was.
I could tell you a real funny story about when he had Marco and I out to play Olympia Fields one summer, but we'll leave that one for when we're drinking beer and eating chub-ups.
Yeah, Mikey and I my younger brother Michael and I are cut out of the same cloth. My older brother and I, he broke the mold, man. And as I like to tell people, if you ever want to have fun and enjoy life, go spend a weekend with my brother because he knows how to do it. I've been an old man since I was 14 years old. David knows how to enjoy life, and God bless him.
Well, I think he was, because when I went up there, it was for one of the SNF events, and I one afternoon, Marco had set it up through David that we went to play Olympia, but I, at that time, was teaching a guy who was one of the retired art directors from Playboy. And David said, what's his name? And when we got to talking, I said, why the curiosity? He said, well, I'm dating a girl that works at Playboy.
Yeah, no, I remember that. Yeah.
I look at Marco, he goes, yeah, he's got the life.
Yeah. Well, and the only thing is at that time, you're not even sure David was married at the time. He might have been married, to be honest with you.
I think it was either just about over or just ended. It was right around that time.
Yeah. No, I remember the girl you're talking about. Yeah, that's funny. Yeah. That's him, man. I'm telling you. I tell you what, I mean, if you ever had an X-rated podcast, he'd be the guy to have on.
If y'all have him on anyway, shit, we'll just roll the dice and let it roll. There was, because both of your brothers had gone into your dad was in the steel industry. And I remember my dad telling me about your dad, how hard he worked when he was working, teaching at night, welding, and then was doing different jobs before he started the company. He's like, Skip worked his ass off, and nobody can ever take that away from him. But
my dad.
Both of your brothers went into the family business, but you was there any ever desire to do that, or were you just gung ho on the golf and laser focused on saying I'm going to make this thing work?
No, I mean, again, I always thought I was going to play pro baseball, but never panned out. But so yeah, my dad, pipe fitter, for people that aren't sophisticatedly mechanical, you have to understand that those guys in that world that are good. So my younger brother, Michael, even at a young age, is the guy that was taking the lawnmower apart and putting it back together just because he was bored, right? He was that kid. Now, if you asked him to read a history book, he'd he'd go insane. And my dad was like that. David has a little bit of it, but not as much. But I'm not sure what the word is, mechanical moron. I mean, I still have a hard time putting gas in a car. I'm that guy. And I just could never look at blueprints and see things from a mechanical perspective to add value to what they did. And from an early age, I knew that I was not going to go work for the family business and be that shithead, just having a job because I was there and they were successful and they were working at it. And I just chose not to do it.
Mm-hmm.
It never felt right to me because I never thought that I could add any value to it. So, I mean, I worked there. I did things that, again, I worked like all of us. We worked at the paper mill for 14 years off and on and, stuff like that where my dad had contracts. And, and what's funny as I got older, I realized that most people are morons mechanically compared to me. I'm a genius compared to most of my friends. But when you're in a family and in a group of that group of people that I was around all the time, mechanically, God, they're just brilliant, and not only looking at blueprints and design and things of that nature, but I mean with their hands, welding and pipe fitting and all the intricate things that if you can do both of them, you'll be very successful. And that's my brother, Michael.
Right.
So, and he's taken it to such another level. He owns, I think, 6 companies now. He's into some huge developments. He's building a huge property across from the football stadium in Ann Arbor, and he's really done well.
I remember when he kind of your dad was getting ready to sell the company because David didn't want to do it or wasn't enjoying it and it wasn't doing well, and I remember when Mike said, "Hey, before you sell it, let me take a shot at it," and he's been on a rapid incline ever since. Yeah, no, it's fascinating. Fascinating what he's turned it into, and he, again, just still, between all he does is really work, and drive to these crazy hockey tournaments all over the country for his kids. The boys are great hockey players. He's got 2 big hockey players, and his oldest daughter is got a full scholarship to go play volleyball by me out here at University of New Hampshire. So they're between him and his wife Mara, they are literally every weekend they're somewhere, trying to help their kids play sports. So nothing changed. I remember when we were young and we used to always stay because Mike's about I think 4 or 5 years older than us, our group, and we used to go to Chicago and all stay at his house, and he would party with us all night, and we'd all wake up at 9:30, 10 o'clock, and where's Mike? And we'd call him, where are you? He's like, yeah, I had to get up at 6 for work. And it was some of the most amazing things I've ever seen. He'd party with us till 3 a.m, and that whole weekend he'd be at work at 6 a.m.
Yeah,
like, Jesus.
Yeah, he's still like that.
Mm-hmm. So he took out the rebel morons of us, and he replaced it with a great wife and kids, and I'm sure he's probably enjoying it a lot better now. I gave him all kinds of crap when we bought this golf course. He's like, I don't know why I'm buying this golf course. I'm never going to be out here. I barely play golf 5 times a year. I'll tell you what, I bet you he played 20 times more than I did this year. I've never seen the guy play more golf, have more fun, because he brought that Serbian crew out there, and he really enjoys being around those guys, Mm-hmm.
And that was a highlight for me last year, watching him be out there with his buddies. The other thing that was a true joy to me was before we could open because of COVID and everything, I had my 3 boys out there. Mikey's boys were out there, and we were mowing and we were doing stuff, and we were out there every day because there was nothing else to do, right? The world was shut down. And that was fun. I mean, it was fun seeing everybody together working, just laughing, having fun, because it was just such a strange time. And that was really enjoyable. That's pretty cool. That was probably worth the whole process. Yeah, it was. It really was. After working at every level in the golf business, playing, knowing how crazy and difficult the dynamics of a club can be, especially private clubs, what the hell possessed you guys, and you in particular, to want to own one? So I've been out of the business now for 4 years, was never getting back into it because, after my ending at Turner Hill, I just, like most guys who really dedicated a long period, bitter, sour of the way I was treated and handled on So I'm like, you know what? I'm never doing that again. I'm never going to put my hard work and energy for someone else's benefit in the golf business again.
Mm-hmm.
If I'm going to do that, just like my brothers and dad, and they always said it, work for yourself. And so I ended up buying a weight loss clinic, and I've been doing that for 3 years. So what happened is we tried to buy Flossmoor 5 years ago when one of my brother's friends, who was the next president, said, "Hey, we're struggling. We might want to sell it." So I made the phone calls and was, not so politely told to go blank myself. And I said, okay. And sure enough, that same guy that told me to go blank myself was one of the guys on the board. And basically all he did was save us about $6 million. So not last June, the previous June, that same gentleman called my brother and said, we're never, and for everybody listening, it's Flossmoor Country Club in Flossmoor, Illinois, built in 1899, been around forever, very historic golf course, just tremendous place. Anyway, they ran it into the ground and bankrupted. And he said, we're not going to be able to open our doors. We're going to sell. So my brother, David, went up there, played with his buddy who was still a member there. And, and when my brother called me, he said, well, let me tell you why they're bankrupt. It's the middle of June. There's nobody on the golf course. And we just had dinner. And there's 14 employees serving 6 people. And I said, well, that's how you go bankrupt. So they chugged along, took forever, got us the documents. In October, we really dug in. I put a huge proposal together, knowing all the information that I finally got with a buddy out here, put the package together, submitted it. They narrowed it down to 3 bids, and we won the bid. So that was basically, early December. I don't want to get into the details of how the whole sale went down because I don't want it to sound disparaging to anybody, but my brother Michael had a strategy we executed with the club in mind to deal with the bank and all of that stuff. And we started paying bills actually before the end of the year. And then the bank put the club into foreclosure, and we bought the club. And we actually closed on the club. I want to say it was like March 5th or 6th of 2020. And there we go. And when we were debating whether to do this, the thing that I told my 2 brothers and our other partner, Matt Halverson, who's my neighbor and friend, and he's our other partner, very, very successful drug manufacturer. He's a third-party drug manufacturer for the biggest pharmaceutical companies. I said, I'll do it with, this kind of guidelines. I'll do it if it's a golf club. If it's going to be a country club with all the nonsense, I have no interest. It's not going to be a men's club, but it's going to be a single membership club. And if someone wants to play 60, 70, 80 rounds, they're going to pay dues. So it's not going to be husband and wife and each play 100 rounds a year. I'm not doing that. I said, because that club failed trying to compete with Olympia Fields and Idlewild, and I don't want to do that. I want to create a different market, a different niche, kind of what Beverly Country Club did. Beverly's pretty much a golf-only men's club now, and it's super successful. And people, that's what they want. They just want to golf now. There's that whole country club market, and that's great. It works well. But I don't want to sell that, and I don't want to manage that, and I don't want to be a part of it. And they all bought in because they believe in that. And it just took off like a rocket. COVID helped. When COVID hit, we were like, oh, my God, what do we do? And it turned out to be the greatest thing that ever happened to us because all the young kids from the city of Chicago had nowhere to go, couldn't be in the city, and they were out there every day. And, we bought the club with 89 members. And on January 1st, I had 183. Wow. And as of yesterday, I have 184.
What are some of the things and the ideas that you're implementing to help change that from a country club to a golfing club?
So there's a nice article in the CDGA magazine, nice big 2-page article where I'm quoted as saying, nobody joined this golf club in its 120 years because of the French fries. And they printed that quote big big bold letters, right? And I still have people bring that up to me. And it's funny, but it's actually it hits right to the heart of it. That golf course is what you're selling. So our time, our energy, our money, our dedication is going to be in that golf course first, the practice facility second. We did spend a lot of money redoing and creating this really cool men's grill. Looks like a sports bar.
Mm-hmm.
I said, and I tell people this, if you're coming here for the Easter Bunny and Santa Claus and Mother's Day brunch, this is the wrong club for you. We are not a dining destination. We will have nice, classy food for the golfers. That's it. We will open on a certain date. We will go dark, and we will close on a certain date. We're not going to be open all winter for 10 people who want to come eat dinner. And we will make smart business decisions based on what I just told you. It's a single membership. So I tell everybody this when they call me and we speak and they ask me about the membership. And I'm very upfront so that there's no hard feelings. No one says, oh, you didn't tell me that. The person who joins is the member. Everybody else with them is a guest, including their spouse, including their children. Spouses and children are non-paying guests, but the ownership reserves the right to tell any guest when they can and cannot play. Because I built that club from 89 members with the rules being that it's a full club and it's sold out. Because I've been through the shit show of where, oh, we'll enforce that rule when we're busy. No. You start right there so people know what to expect when that club does sell out.
They know where they stand. That's right.
Right? And you know, the 89 members have a 3-year exemption from any of those rules. But when that's up, you know, if your spouse wants to play 60, 70 times, if your spouse wants to play at Saturday morning at 7 o'clock, that person can pay full dues. And they're welcome to. Because it's an access policy with me. You want to pay for access? Here's the cost. And if you break, and Troon really taught me this, right? When I worked for Troon, you know, you have your grid. It's just like, they call it T-sheet utilization, but it's the hotel model. It's the airline model. You know, as those seats fill up, as the rooms fill up, the rate goes up. Mm-hmm. But you only have so many spots, right? And when I went and did my town hall meeting with the members there, this is what I told them. I said, I can't do it right now, but I'm going to tell you what I need out of every tee time, out of every slot, because I only have so many of them. And I can't put 60 players a day on that golf course that are paying nothing. And no disrespect to anybody, but spouses and kids, that's zero. That's zero revenue. And if you look at and I've argued this with PGA guys, and I'll argue it to the end of time, you know, you cannot be sharing memberships. And that's what these things, now you can, but if your dues want to be $1,200 a month, $1,500 a month, and that's what's happened, right? It's absurd.
Right. And,
so,
and what are your guys' dues?
What are our dues?
Right, yeah.
For a full membership, it's $700 a month. That's it.
And is that in season or year round?
No, it's year round, and it includes, we don't a la carte it. It includes the range, it includes the locker room, and it includes the bag storage. We don't whack you on top of it. And the other thing I did, which I think has been a home run, is I despise food and beverage minimums. I think it's a scam.
Yes.
And I think it's designed by clubs. It's designed by clubs who cannot provide good food and good service, right?
Mm-hmm.
So,
it's a tax,
but I do
is
believe
what it is. It's like, you know, related to government. It's a tax.
100%. So some of the best clubs I know in the country don't have it because their philosophy is, if I can't make you want to come eat here, then that's shame on me, right?
Yeah,
but
build a better mousetrap.
But I believe in minimums. So we have a club minimum. So as a full member, you're responsible to spend $2,400 from April 1st through the end of October, okay? And it includes all your food and beverage, your carts, and your guest fees. And if you can't spend that, I honestly don't want you there.
No shit. I mean, it's what, 7 months you got to spend $2,400?
Right. I have guys that spend that in the weekend. And it's fascinating how many guys didn't do it.
I'm sure there's got to be a small percentage of pain in the asses.
Yeah. Yeah.
Very small.
Yeah. What do you call it? Uncollected minimum was 24,000 this year. That's it. So, you know, so in here, if anybody's going to listen to this and wants to learn how to run a golf club, and I gave the speech in the golf shop because the gentleman I'm going to refer to was in the golf shop with someone in the business, and he walked in, and I'm going to tell you his name because he's a great guy. His name is Rick Skrotsky. Rick Skrotsky is on the legal. He's actually, I think, the head legal guy for the CDGA. Right. When he bought the club, he introduced himself, and everybody told me he's going to be one of your favorites. Spent almost $10,000 in guest fees last year.
Wow.
Spent $400 in food. Would you penalize that guy and whack him $2,400 for food? No, that's a moron. That is the worst business you could ever do, but clubs do.
That's people who have no vision. I think that's part of one of the issues I have with the PGA at times.
Right. But I'll tell you even better, the people that generally are sitting on these boards at clubs are the guys that don't spend $1 in guest fees and think he's the problem. Mm-hmm. And that's how you get to these clubs going bankrupt. He's my best customer. He's my hero. I love that. And I told the story right in front of him. I said, but our industry, PGA of America, all these knuckleheads that are on boards of clubs that don't ever support their own club, they're the ones creating the exact opposit of this. I said, imagine if I had 100 of these guys.
I was about to say, if you had 183 of those guys, they'd be beating your door down to join.
He's 71 years old. He walks. He brings out his buddies that are in their 70s. They all walk. And I don't think the slowest round they ever played might have been 340. Mm. So every one time I get one of these young guys that complains about, how they can't play the golf course, and I actually put it in an email to everyone when I sent out a nasty email about pace of play. I said, listen, anybody wants to complain, there's a group of guys that play here 4 days a week, and they're all in their 70s, and they walk. Why don't you get behind them and tell them you can't be done? And so he came in, he goes, were you referring to me? I go, absolutely. And, that's one of the glorious things about owning your own golf course is I can say and do things that really hit hard. Mm-hmm. And I got nobody looking over my shoulder. And, when I talk to members and I talk to guests and I talk to prospects, I have a phrase that I like to tell them is that I think like an owner and act like an employee. And that's what I do. But, I've already removed 2 people from the club that didn't belong. We don't need their money. That's a very powerful sales tool. Mm-hmm. So, I tell them what the rules are. We're super nice. I want everybody to tell them, just come out here, take a deep breath, have fun, drink, play golf, practice. No one's going to ever ask you for your opinion or ask you what we should do. Your job is to come here, have fun, and leave. That's it. Pretty simple to sell that.
The club has a very unique history, being the year it was built and that whole area of golf. Can you just tell everybody a little bit about that?
Yeah. So, for people that aren't familiar with the South Side of Chicago, so going back to slaughterhouses, Chicago at the time, turn of the century, was the slaughterhouse capital of America. And the wealthy people in Chicago, because of the stink of the cattle in the summer, when it got hot, either fled north or south. The railroad that fled south, the last stop was in Homewood, Illinois. So this group of guys, I'm not going to bore you with the details, put together this parcel, blah, 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 and built, at the time, Homewood Country Club in 1899. Whatever, I'm not sure what year, 1904, whatever, turned it into Flossmoor Country Club. But that was the first one there. So, and at one point, at the end of that train station, then the guys came down and went and bought Olympia Fields. And back in the day, Olympia Fields was 4 golf courses. It was the largest golf facility in America. They had to sell 2 golf courses during World War II to survive. Mm-hmm. But you had, at the end of that train stop, because, again, it was all driven by getting out of the city, you had 2 Jewish clubs, Ravenslow and Idlewild. You had Calumet, which was a Donald Ross. So in literally a 2 square, a square mile of 2 miles, you had 5 incredibly well done, prominent country clubs, and that was that way up until, Ravislow ended up going bankrupt and became public. Calumet is closing, going away. So really all you have left is of private clubs is Idlewild, Flossmoor, and Olympia Fields. And Olympia Fields obviously is the 600-pound gorilla,
right?
Hosted
It's a different
majors
animal.
and things like that.
It's completely
exactly.
different.
Yeah. Hey, it's where I learned how to play golf. I have all the respect in the world. Brian Morrison does a great job. I think the club is great. My parents were members there for 30 years, lived on the driving range. So that's where, a guy named John Spiropoulos was the pro when I was learning how to play golf.
Mm-hmm.
Basically helped me learn. So I think it's great. And again, but I can't compete with that. And that's kind of what drove Flossmoor into the ground. They tried to compete with it, did a redo on the golf course, $4 million on a pool house. And then when the economy turned and things turned and they didn't adjust correctly, well, it didn't take long. 10 years ago, they had 450 members.
Wow. So
when we bought the club, only 32 had a voting right. Goes fast. So, but it's a great golf course, and that's what I'm selling. And they have the greatest greens you'll ever find. We spend most of our time trying to speed the greens up because they're so fast. Mm-hmm. They're great. They're world class.
Do you know who the architect was?
Yeah, it was a guy named Tweedy. He did that course, and then he did Midlothian, and then he died very young. Yep.
Yeah, if anyone wants to check it out, the website, it's at flossmoorgolfclub.com.
Yep. And then what they should do flossmoorgolfclub.com. And we have a simple one-page. I don't even have a private side yet. And,
no, but it does show. I was looking at it earlier today. It show you can go hole by hole and check out each one, and the pictures are, it very clearly illustrates the old school golf of that era, and it's been maintained. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and if people that listen to this, if they're really into golf, go on. Go listen to Andy Johnson on the Fried Egg and Golf Atlas. There's just so many tremendous articles written about that. And I can't think of the Bobby Jones book, but Bobby Jones talks about Flossmoor being one of his favorite courses ever. And, Bobby Jones owned the course record there for, I think, 58 years. And for anybody who's ever played it, the 7th hole was a par 3. He dunked it in the water and made double. And then he made 8 straight threes.
Whew.
How about that?
That's turning it around real quick.
Yeah. So, yeah, he loved the place. It's a good golf course. It could probably host a senior open, a ladies open. It's not long enough to host anything beyond that. But, I've been talking with the section about the Illinois Open, things like that, because, I hosted several mini tour events last summer, and, 5 under always was the winning score. So,
hold its own.
I
That's
can't
pretty
think
good.
Yeah, and the kid who won twice plays in Europe. God, I don't know if he played at Wake Forest or where. He's a really good player, but, a world-class player, So, yeah, so you go out there and, it's not tricked up. Here's the golf course, 5 under wins. So.
And was the focus on getting people dedicated to playing golf, as you mentioned, because it's now a golf club and not a country club? But the focus on going back to kind of its roots on getting people from the city that want to come out there, that they can hop on a train and then, let's say, a half hour, 40 minutes, be from inner city Chicago or the business district all the way down to your place. They can hang out, play till dark, catch a train, and be home for dinner, or come down for a weekend.
Yeah. Exactly. So we knew that the demographics were going to come from the city. Even Olympia Fields, I want to say that like 80% of their members live over, 25, 30 minutes away from the club. That whole neighborhood and that whole area, the demographics have changed, and I think most people that are there have already either joined a club or are never joining a club, right?
Mm-hmm.
So if you're a younger kid, when I say kid, under 35, and you live in the city, right? So in Chicago, your options, I can go north, I can go west, or I can go south. Well, the traffic is the worst going north, horrible going west. And if you're not a legacy, you're never getting into any of those private clubs. Out west, if you get in, you're talking 150 plus, and waitlist. So your best options are south. Beverly is full, sold out, because they redid their course and it's spectacular. So now what do you have? You have Olympia Fields. Okay, well, Olympia Fields, I think, just went up to 50 grand. So what are my options? Well, it's very little traffic because you're going against traffic. And it's really only, at the most 30 minutes. And so depending on where you live in the city, it's a nothing ride. And I thought a lot of people would take the train because the train stop is less than 3/4 of a mile from, we have guys that do walk it, but you can. So, and most of the kids tell me they don't, because if you don't live where that train starts, by the time you take an Uber to here, to there, you can almost be halfway here. So it's actually just easier not to take the train.
Mm-hmm.
So, and with the cost of Ubering, I want to say an Uber from let's just say the middle of the city down there is like $30.
Oh,
so,
God, it's nothing.
It's nothing. So most guys are just like, it's just, so I was shocked at that. But yeah, we actually put in 5 rooms, and one of the big things we're working on now is, what direction do we go? I'm a big believer that, to really kind of tip your revenue, you've got to create a out-of-town market, national members, regional members, guys that will come 3 times a year, long weekends with 7 of their buddies, drop a lot of money, play 36 a day, and leave. Mm-hmm. And there's a big market for that if you have a great golf course. And again, when the city era comes back to turning into a city that's in America, that demographic will come back. So we're exploring how do we put in enough rooms to make that volume worthwhile. And we will. And we have plenty of room. I mean, the clubhouse is 10 times bigger than it needs to be. So that is our next phase. So hopefully, I know we're going to cross 200 dues paying members probably by May. I would hope to be 210, 215, midsummer, and then but our goal, as we tell everybody, is we need 250 full dues paying members, and then another 100 ancillary out of town, seniors, juniors, things of that nature. I have a membership for guys 24 to 29 and 30 to 34. And once you turn 35, you're a full member. And then I have a senior membership at 65 and at 71.
Yeah, so the national membership seems to work really good. There's 2 clubs here. You and I talked last year that about this time when you were in the process of this, was Secession being one, and I think you've been here or played there, and they were basically built on exactly what you're saying. You get a group of people, a group of women, a group of guys, whoever's the member, that they come in for either a long weekend or a normal weekend. They stay at the club, they eat there, they drink there, they play golf, they buy clothes, and then they go home. And then there's another group from another area coming in.
Yep.
Yeah, that I'm sure as the word spreads in the golfing world about your place, that's probably going to happen. It might creep up on you faster than you think.
Yeah, and Secession, the reason I think Harmon did such a good job at Secession is it was always affordable.
Mm-hmm.
They never made it where it was 150 grand. It was always reasonable to a successful person, and I think it still is. And again, we're keeping all of ours there. And again, we have the ability to raise the rates or do this or cut it off. But, again, we want to pay our bills. We want to make money. We're not going to ever make any money there. We just want to make enough money to put it back into the facility that, needs to get fixed. And not gouge people. Myself, David, Michael, and Matt, those guys are successful guys. They've made a lot of money. And they're bright people. And I don't care how much money you have. No one wants to get gouged for anything.
Mm-mm.
I don't care what it is. And so that's just one of our staples of, we're not doing that. We're not gouging. We're just not going to do it. There's a price to things. It's like, it's like me. We discount stuff on Mondays and Tuesdays. Hey, if you're a cost conscious guy and you want to bring your friends, I get it. You want to bring your buddies. You don't want to drop, $100 to play around the golf. Well, come on Tuesday, $65, and you can walk. I don't know how you can find a course of that quality for $65.
No, not in today's world, and not in anywhere around Illinois or Chicago. Now the cost of living up there, I mean, that's dirt cheap.
It is. And so, but I think you got to have that, right? Because there are those guys,
mm-hmm.
And the way I look at my young guys is they're all successful, and they're going to become more successful. But if I get them locked in there for 5 or 6 years, all their friends are there, all their competitors are there. People stay at a club. They stay at a club because of their golf group, that fraternal part of, these are my guys. This is who I gamble with. This is who I drink with. This is who I eat with, And we already have it. I've taken a lot of joy in watching this group of, I want to say 16 young guys, and some of them are really, really good players. I got one from Marquette, one from Northern Illinois, and a couple other guys. I mean, they're legitimate scratch players, and they've all bonded. None of them knew each other, and they all like to play now, and they have fun. And to watch there's a real joy to that. So, and I did that at Turner Hill. I got to watch all these people that didn't know each other become friends. And I'm watching it there. And then the old guard who had been there have seen it and embraced it. And it's all worked fairly well. People have really enjoyed what we did. They see the money we spent. They see the improvements. They see the effort. And that goes a long way, but it's easy when it is what it is. This is what we're doing. This is who we are. And I don't have to sell it. I just have to be honest about it.
Yes, because there is a large contingent, I think, of people looking for something like that, where it's not, as you said, we'll enforce that rule when we get to it. But and that, you're going to piss X amount of people off when you do that. You'll make a few happy now, you'll piss the other ones off, and then when it's their turn to get a so-called favor, and they don't get it, it just becomes a total shitstorm. And the fact that you guys know who and exactly what you are as a club from day one, it's amazing how many businesses don't know that. Because how the hell are you supposed to attract people who have the same vision or ideals in the culture you develop? Otherwise, these businesses are bouncing around like ping pong balls, clubs being a perfect example, and never really have an identity or understanding of what the mantra of the place is. And to establish that from the beginning, I tell everybody, it's step one. I don't care if you're in the golf business, you're in selling tiddlywinks. You have to know who you are as an entity.
Yeah, and there was a very successful guy at Turner Hill named Kurt Meldon who had taken 2 companies public and it was probably worth $200-300 million. And he quit Turner Hill because he was so bitter. And when I asked him why, he said, because Turner Hill's a tweener. And I don't ever want to be a part of the tweener. Mm-hmm. I either want to be part of the best or I want to pay for what I'm getting. And he quit over that. And he said, he told me, look me in the eye, he said, don't ever be a tweener. And he went and joined this place called Bass Rocks, which is up near him. It's about 1/10 of the price of Turner Hill. And it's perfect. And he loves it. And it's a great club with great people. And it's affordable. And again, they don't gouge anybody, but they know who they are. And people love it. And it's appropriate. And Turner Hill for a long time gouged people because of the bankruptcies and the struggles and everything. And he had all the money in the world. He could have bought Turner Hill 50 times over. He's like, man, it's just, it doesn't work for me.
And like you said, Secession knows exactly that they want people to come there and have a good time. And that's one of the reasons that the back porch was built so big. I mean, it sits there and overlooks the marsh in 16, 17, 18. And the deck on the back of Secession, for anyone that's never been there, is probably almost half the size of the inside of the clubhouse. And you just have these people that just start to congregate out there. Whether they're drinking iced tea or bourbon or wine, people just start to develop these friendships, as you said that you're doing it at Flossmoor, and it just snowballs or catches fire, and it just grows and grows and grows, because that's human interaction, even in this world we live in today, is still the number one thing I think that people miss out on, is they're so focused in success or driving themselves harder. That serves a big thing of what you guys are doing up there.
Right. And so if you come to Flossmoor, so it was interesting when we were negotiating, we were down in the basement in the old men's grill, which is kind of half in the ground and dark, and is like a dungeon. And I said, why are we in this dungeon? Like, well, this is where we always do. And so I said, well, how come you guys don't do stuff upstairs? And one of the guys goes, well, the women really don't like us up there. And I said, oh, that's fascinating. Now you go to Flossmoor, the second floor is almost like the third floor. It elevates, massive deck, massive, and it overlooks the entire back nine. It is spectacular. Closed on the club. We blew up that whole thing and made it a men's grill, and we're going to use the whole upper deck and exactly what you're talking about.
That's awesome. And I'm sure that deck will be packed at certain weekends in the summer or in the evenings. And
yeah, because think about it. You're sitting on a deck. You're overlooking the 18th green, the 17th tee, and the 16th green are all within 50 yards of each other. Old school, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's spectacular. I'm like, and I said, how do you guys not take advantage of this? This is awesome. Like, you have to be up here. Well, I'm like, okay, again, this conversation's over. Again, here's what we're doing. It's again, and you sit there and you shake your head and go, Jesus, man. Would you do this if you owned it yourself? No. Well, this is the way it is. That's what I love in the club business. Well, this is the way it's been.
Yeah, this is the way we've always done it.
Yeah, that's what Sears has on the bottom of their logo right now. How'd that work out there?
A little company called Amazon.
Yeah, and Pete, Pete's funny, right? So my whole career, I was a very stuffy. I believed in the rules. Shirts tucked in and this and that. And I was that guy. I loved the formality of it. I loved the pomp and circumstance of it. I always did. I always revered it. I always respected it. And I've kind of gone the other way, man. I've kind of lightened up. My number one rule as an operator is you better play in under 3 hours and 50 minutes. Like, that's my rule, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think if you stick to that, everything else becomes pretty simple. If you want to play a sixsome, once again, go back to rule number one. Can you play a sixsome in 3 hours and 45 minutes? I don't really care, right? Man, do you untuck your shirt? God, does it bother me deep down? Yeah, but you know what? I just don't care anymore. Maybe I'm too old to care.
What about the new one with the music while they're playing?
Okay, well, so I was never for it, but I've been swayed. Okay,
mm-hmm.
But here's my annoyance with it. And I have a rule from now on when I play with guys. I'm like, listen, somebody's going to play the music. If two of you start playing music, I'm gone. I'm walking off the golf course. Have you noticed that one guy's got one song going on over here, the other guy's got one song going on over there? Yeah. Oh, it drives me insane, right? It does. So I don't know why I thought of this. I don't know how I came up with it, but during our member guests, and again, if you come off the back of like I was just describing that porch, the club has these two like monstrous speakers like you'd have for a concert. And I decided that during the member guest, I was going to put these speakers on the back patio, overplaying the whole back nine, and just jam music all day. So if the wind was blowing the correct way, you could actually hear it over the whole back nine. And people loved it. It was unbelievable. The comments, they were like, this is awesome. And I heard it 100 times that week. You know what this is like? This is like a frat party that turned into a golf event.
Right.
And I'm like, well, cool. They're relaxed. They're having fun. So I did it 3 or 4 more times. Actually, I did it. We hosted the pro. We hosted a pro, and they asked the section asked me to do it for the pro.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and so it became a thing. I only had one issue, which is a funny story. Everybody loved it. I do it one day on a weekend. I get this brutally nasty email that I won't go into the details, but it was nasty. And my response, to be polite, was, yeah, don't ever send me an email like this, and you need to come talk to me before I, go on with the music. And I like the guy. He's a super nice young guy. And so I go, you got to tell me why you're so bitter about this. And so he says, well, first of all, I'm playing with two guys from Ireland that are clients who are completely stodgy, old school. And sure enough, when they're when they're bitter about it, they're coming up our 16th right where it's blaring. And Trent Reznor, the song "I Want to F You Like an Animal," you know that song? that's the song that's playing while they're putting on the 16th green. And the kid who put his music in there, I have a rule. I'm like, no rap, no swear words, and it just happened to get into the queue. And of course, it was playing right when these guys were on the most loudest part of the. And so he goes, and that's what set me off. And I'm like, okay, all right, I get your anger. I apologize. I'm sorry. Point well taken. I go, but I'm not changing it. Just too many. You're the only guy. You're it. You're the outlier. He said, I understand. I said, but you brought up a good point. I need to be the guy who monitors exactly the songs that come on there.
Playlist,
because
yeah.
We kind of try and stick to country, 80s, again, no crazy rap, no F-bombs, no N-bomb. No one wants to hear that. But listen to some good music. You're hearing it. It's, believe me, it's fun. I mean, it's actually, and the other thing I came out of it is when I do it from now on, I'm going to announce it. Say, hey, by the way, Friday is going to be music day at 12 o'clock. We're going to be playing the music. Don't bring your stodgy friends if that's going to offend you. So
yeah, so they know. Hey, here's what we do a lot of times. If you don't like it, here's when you can come when we don't.
Yeah, and again, if I did it every day, it would be annoying.
Mm-hmm.
I'll do it. Besides the member guests, I'll do it maybe 5 times. So it's a novelty and it's different, not where it's wearing me out. So that's kind of where I've changed, again, my if you read my rules, the dress code is really funny. It says, we expect you to dress appropriately. And if it is what it says, if you have to question your outfit, you're probably not dressed appropriate.
Mm-hmm.
But and then people ask me, I go, it's like the old thing about pornography. I can't tell you what it is, but I know what it is when I see it. So again, if you don't look like a slob, who cares if you don't look like a slob? You look nice. Okay, what's the difference? Who's it harming is the way I look at it now. Right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
it's not harming
it
anybody.
Really a problem that needs to be fixed? No.
Yeah. My brother came late one, I don't know, it was a Friday or Saturday. All the Serbians were out there, and he was dirty work clothes and jeans. And I go, what are you doing? He goes, I'm going to buy a pair of shorts. I'm like, why? He goes, I can't go out there in jeans. I'm like, why not? I go, one, you do realize you're the owner, right? He goes, but he's like me. He's like, yeah, but no one else can. I go, I got guys out there in jeans all the time. I always tell them, I said, you want to wear jeans playing golf? Go ahead. You're an idiot. You know what I mean? In the middle of the summer, but you just, that's my, yeah, like, dude, you're not hurting anybody. It's 6:30. You're going to play 3 holes, So, but he's the same thing. He comes from that Olympia Fields mentality. No one sets foot on the property, with blue jeans and, all that stuff.
Yeah, you got to change your shoes in the locker room. You can't change them anywhere else. The whole litany of the stodgy, decades-long crazy shit.
Yeah, it's stupid for a bunch of old, stuck-up people who, let's think they're better than you. I mean, really? Am I an evil person because I changed my shoes in the parking lot? Does that make me? I mean, really? What? I get it. Maybe back in 1924, and so that's the other fascinating thing. I uncovered. We found a bunch of old documents. I've got board notes, the board minutes from 1903 to 20 something, when they were talking about the USAM, when they were talking about prohibition. Really fascinating stuff.
You ought to get some of
So
that stuff framed and put it in the halls so people can check that
yeah, I
stuff out.
am. They don't have anything up there. They have birds and
Oh God.
nonsense, and this stuff was in a filing cabinet. They didn't even know they had it. And I actually have 2 documents signed by, don't quote me, it's the president of the time. I want to say it's S.H. Taylor. I think he was, his name is Taylor. He's one of the early presidents. But when they bought the land, it was government land. So it was him and a guy who was a general and that signed the document. I have 2 documents that are on like that old parchment paper.
Mm-hmm.
And the old ink from all that old ink had iron in it. I have 2 of those documents.
Yeah, you got to get those framed and framed. Someone who knows what they're doing so the listings stay intact.
Yeah, I actually thought about calling the not the Smithsonian, maybe the Smithsonian. I'm asking them. But people told me though that the way you preserve them is you have to enclose them in gas, and then they put argon inside in the glass, so there's no oxygen and it won't deteriorate. That's how they do it.
Jesus.
So, yeah, and it sounds cheap.
Do you have it? Have you found any like old pictures of old holes where you could, because everybody always looks for member guest tea gifts, and how many umbrellas and shoe bags can you give with a company logo on it? I always thought that a lot of these old clubs, like Savannah Golf Club, is 30 minutes from my house, and I played in the member guest with a buddy of mine over there, and for years, and they used to always have some cool gifts. But I thought, hey, your club was built in 1794. If you can find any picture from back then, it'd be an awesome gift to have a matted frame picture of one of the holes from even 100 years ago.
So I have some photos. What I don't have is, like, there's a book they did when they turned 100 years old. There's a bunch of good photos. And what I can't find is who took all these, like, where are the images that you took? Like, who? And when I found out that these guys have allowed people over the years to leave with stuff, that this lady was a historian. Well, she moved to Florida and took everything with her and never, what I mean? So people have slowly walked away with a lot of this stuff. But we're trying to keep, we dug through all the archives and all that stuff. And again, I have the original 400 people who took out these deeds to buy the club from Homewood Country Club. I still have all their documents. They have all those. It's weird what they kept and what they didn't keep. What really sucks is the first 2 clubhouses burned down. So I can't imagine what got destroyed. So when you play our 4th hole, there's a tennis court there. That's the old foundation for the first 2 clubhouses. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But one of the projects we're doing, the thing that Andy Johnson's and the old guy who redid the golf course is I'm doing this. We're slowly chipping away at it. I'm going to restore the greens to their original size and their original shape. And when they did the golf course 10 years ago, the people didn't want to do that, which I don't understand. So if you look at, there's a big photo from 1913 in the locker room. It's amazing how many of the greens were square. And so we're going to put that back. That's what I really want to do. That's going to be my legacy, is restoring the 16 of those original greens are the original greens. There's only 2 new greens on the property. Mm-hmm. And I want those 16 greens to be shaped like they were in 1913.
That'd be pretty cool. You gonna have to move any bunkers around or anything like that?
No. Most of them, the fronts and the backs need to get extended. That's really is. Here's what it is. And I've explained it to people. I go, think about this. Here's the photo. I said, if I told you that the guy mowing was going to chip off 1/8 of an inch every year from this green, it's a lot. That's a lot after 100 years.
Yeah, I had Tim Morgan on. He was the chief agronomist at the USGA, and that drives him crazy. That inattention to detail on any of his crews when they would just miss it by 1/8 of an inch. He wouldn't go ballistic, but I mean, it just piss him off to no end.
Right, and that's how it happens. And then I asked our superintendent, well, why don't they address it? He goes, well, if you're a superintendent, it's less to take care of. Mm-hmm. so that you just don't care. So we started it last fall. So here's a good one, Pete. This is what becomes difficult when you have Poana that's 100 years old. You got to grow it yourself. And the only way you can grow it is from the cores, right?
Mm-hmm.
So we have to, scrape out the grass, take it out, and then we have to can only do it once a year, really, where we can take the cores and then put the cores in those spots to grow the grass. These guys, unfortunately, never built a nursery, so there's no nursery, which they should have. That's the other thing we're going to look at probably next year is where do we put a massive nursery? But again, we have to take the cores to build the nursery. If I take the cores to build a nursery to start it, then I have no cores to expand the greens, so it's kind of a catch-22. So our goal is to try and do 2 spots a year until we can get a big enough nursery to do big chunks. But the nursery will take at least 2 full years, So anyway, so that's one of the things that we think is important. Restoring that golf course to a 90. Besides the bunkers, we'll never have the money to redo the bunkers, but making the greens back to the turn of the century shape.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. I mean, and that's something that the members can talk about, water cooler talk, and they talk about at cocktail parties like, hey, our course, 1899, and they're putting the greens back to what they were over 100 years ago. I mean, that's cool stuff that people can be proud of. Yeah.
And, I'm hosting an outing for the Friday guys, so I'm looking forward to that in June 20th. Do you listen to him?
From time to time, I catch him. But between this and daily life and work and teaching and everything else, it gets hard to find time. When I'm in the car, I try to tune in, and then, you get 20 minutes in, and you're off doing something else.
I'm the only golf pro that, worked all summer, 100 hours a week, and then came home, works at a weight loss clinic 4 days a week. Everybody thinks I'm playing golf. I got my kids. I got winter. I mean, it's just exactly, it flies by, man. But I like it here. I mean, it's Massachusetts, but I live in a great town, 3 boys, they were all born here. So great wife. And, like all golf pros, man, ups and downs, but I'm on the right direction now, and enjoying everything I'm doing at the club, and I like the direction of it, and I like the people that are there, and it sure makes it easy. It's fun, and I live on property when I'm there to get up there every day at 7:00 and look forward to seeing your 120 members every day. It's a lot of fun.
You've taken numerous clubs from start to prosperous. Do you enjoy the challenge of that, or is that has it become somewhat of a niche of yours in kind of the same way that your brothers and your dad could look at a set of blueprints and determine things from an engineering standpoint? You seem to have a knack for doing something very similar, but in more of a creative, abstract way with a full facility instead of, let's say, building a widget.
Yeah, well, see, that's my blueprint is the golf course and start to finish and all of it. But you're right. I did it at, Maroon Creek was done, but I did it from soup to nuts at Hale Plantation, Turner Hill, River Valley Ranch. I took all those from ground to grass. It had a lot to do with all of it, T signs and this and that and markers. And so, I do like it. I view Flossmoor as a project like that because, when you only have 89 members, it's really starting from scratch. And you knew everything, new point of sale system. One of my glorious moves is I got rid of the ball washers, which I'm an anti-ball washer guy. So if anybody wants a ball washer, call me. I can send it to you. I'm a minimalist guy on the golf course. I don't like anything vertical. I don't like to see cart paths. I don't want any 150 stakes. I just want you to look at the golf course.
Mm-hmm.
I don't believe in big monstrosity, tee markers, and we have no tee signs at Flossmoor, which I love. Right. But yeah, I do. Yeah. It's a good point. I never really looked at it that way, but, so like right now, my projects besides the greens are redoing the practice facilities, trying to get the dirt, mound it. We need to protect a little bit. I want to hide it. It's too visible from the golf course and on number 1 and 2. I want to hide the practice facility, and I think we can do it. We just need the dirt, and so I'm going to do that and stuff like that. So again, the other thing we're going to do is we're going to get rid of all the nonsense grass and just put in wild, fescue. That place just mows way too much rough. It's just silly. There's got to be 20 acres of grass we shouldn't be mowing.
Make like a waste area?
So, yeah, there's prairie there now, which is really cool what they did, but they need to go further with it. There's so many holes where, you'd have to hit 100-yard hook and it's all grass that has to be mowed, and it just makes no sense to be mowing it. So, we'll put in that low red fescue and some prairie grass, and which we have now, and it won't affect the playability. It'll look beautiful, but just less maintenance.
Yeah, cut down on your maintenance costs, gasoline and everything, man hours.
Yeah, all of it. You should be. I'm a guy who would just. You should be really just mowing tees, fairways, greens, and I love that approach. The less you have to mow, the better off you are. And we have a lot of that in some areas, but it just needs to get better. And again, as I tell we have a great superintendent, a kid named Luke Braun. Is just awesome. And that was key to our, purchase, is him staying. Just a great kid, great at his job, and passionate passionate about what he does, which is great. And he, same thing, we'll do the things to help him, not hinder him.
When you do these clubs, and in particular Flossmoor, is it something that you say, okay, here's our the typical business model, here's our 5, 10-year, 15-year plan, or is it something that you already established that, hey, we know what we are, and then each year you identify something that you want to modify to resemble that, or to keep that overarching mantra?
Well, no, it's good. I think in anything you do like that, you got to have a 1-year, 3-year, 5-year, 10-year plan, right? Mm-hmm. And again, all of them are based on X. If this reaches X, then you can execute. This is what you want to do. So there, obviously, our first goal, and when I did this, I projected that in 3 years, we were going to lose, probably $4 million. Now, we're not going to, because I was budgeting to gain 30 members, right? Last year, 30. That's what I had, because I didn't know what was going to happen. So we exceeded that, threefold. So now I can reset my sights that, okay, when we get to this parameter, I know that we're going to have the money to do this. Okay. And then at this parameter, I know that this is what we're going to do. So, one of the big things we did this winter, I didn't want to do it. I am the cheap. There's some things, man, you couldn't get me to spend. Boy, I'd drop $100,000 on launch monitors tomorrow. But my brothers wanted to redo the awnings. Right? There's a huge awning. It's horrible. Well, my brother's Michael's like, again, we're not doing this half-assed, and we're doing it, and it's $65,000. And but I would have never made that decision. But he wants it for these reasons, and he's right. I'm wrong. He's right. And, but it's important. Some of the things that I don't see as important, he and the other guys see as important. And it's a good conversation of ownership that I know you don't see it, but here's what I see in it. And I'm like, okay, makes sense. And we have those debates, and nobody gets their way, and they're very minimal, but, we think it's important to show that classiness and stability that we're willing to write a $65,000 check for an awning, right? Mm-hmm. And it does. It makes a statement. Now, we just signed on to take on $850,000 in new equipment. That, to me, makes a statement, but nobody gives a crap about that, right? Because they could see the awning every time they finish the golf course, and it looks classy. So, you have to balance all of those. And again, to me, the next phase is the practice facilities. I'm a huge practice facility guy. I think people like to practice as much as they play. And I think we have to go and spend, money on, like I mentioned, not only the practice range, but we have a really nice short game area that if I had $100,000, it would be world class. So that's another thing I want to do, because I think that sells memberships. And I think that retains memberships, and a lot of older guys that they like to hit balls, they like to chip, and they like to do that stuff.
Yeah, they like to piddle around. They like to tweak their grip. I mean, guys like my dad, he's going to be 78 in February, and he watches YouTube or he reads a few articles, and hey, I'm going to go out this afternoon to the range or the short game area, and I'm going to try what this said, and then I'm going to try it. It occupies their mind.
Yeah, and then so if you look at the Google or the picture from above of Flossmoor, and you look at the back of the clubhouse, and you look at 18, 17, 16, that is all closely mown fairway, right? So last winter I was sitting there, I should say spring. I'm sitting there, I'm going, man, what would I do with this? And it's huge. And I go, I'll tell you what, boy, I'm going to make this a Himalayan putting green. And that is going to be one big putting green. And, I asked the superintendent. He loved the idea, except for the fact of, again, where am I going to get that much bent grass or poana? The architect loved it. Everybody loved it. So that we were going to do it in the fall, but because of some other issues that cropped up, we chose not to do it. So we kind of decided that next fall, we're going to get a construction company to tear it up, do it the right way, and then we're just going to put in bent grass and then kind of accelerate the PO taking over. Because we don't want to sit there and have an ugly area for 2.5, 3 years. It's that big. But our goal is, going back to your point, we're going to put lighting around it. We're going to put music, low-level music around it. And when you have all these people coming, like you talked about at Secession, now you're 10 steps from the bar, and the people will hang out there all night and putt.
Yes.
And have fun and have contests. And to me, when I told the architect that, he said, in my opinion, the cost of that putting green will pay for itself in 2 years in booze sales alone.
Pinehurst put that, and I forget the name of it. It's
exactly
the putting course with all the mounds and everything, and people sit out there half the night.
Yep.
And I think before COVID hit or something happened, they were in the and I told them, because we were there the first year it opened, because the Carolinas Pro year-end tournament is there it's the first week of December every year. And we were up there at the year it opened, and I said, I said, look, it's a great thing. If I can just offer some advice, I said, you guys should probably put a bar out here. And they said, yeah, it's interesting you say that, because that's in the works. Because they would make a fortune, people playing and drinking beer and whatever they're drinking right there. And all that, it wouldn't have to be very big.
Put a beverage cart out there.
Mm-hmm.
Put a beautiful girl sitting in a beverage cart. You make a fortune.
Yep.
Right? Yeah, exactly. So that's what we're doing. The thing about us, we don't have to really move any dirt. You know what I mean? It's all designed fairly perfectly. And so, but we're going to so anyway, that's where we're going with it. And I want to have rocking chairs out there. We're talking about putting a couple bocce courts up on the upper deck, or even down there. Guys in that area love bocce ball. I'm like, all right, that sounds cool to me, right? I mean, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and again, with COVID, people outside of the city don't want to go to the city, and that ain't changing for quite a while. So the more things you do to get people to stay at your facility and have fun and spend money, the better off you are. They just can't be massively expensive, ventures that are, and unfortunately, Illinois, you don't want anything where you're going to have to put 20 people out there manning it. You know what I mean? It's just the cost of employees absurd in Illinois. It really is. So, and a putting green is not. You have your bar already there. You don't have to put anything in. You just got to put it in the putting green, and you got to light it. Light it and put in some low-level cool music. So
eat that stuff.
It's coming. Yeah. So
the looking back on your career, is there anything that, if you were given a mulligan, that you would have done over?
Playing wise or work wise?
Any of it.
Yeah, well, that's a good one. I'll tell you, one of my biggest disappointments is when they just opened East Lake.
Mm-hmm.
The guy that was running it was a guy named Jim Gerber, I believe his name was, and I had an interview there to be the first assistant. And it snowed that day. How about that, in Atlanta? And I couldn't play. We were supposed to play, yeah. And where they had the tour championship, and I didn't get that job, and I regret not being able to play. And I think if we had been able to play, I probably would have had a better chance. But working there, I think would have set my career on a course to really be able to get one of those top 10 jobs, right? The one that you only get when, you're at the Pine Valleys and you're at the Shinnecocks and you're at some of those facilities.
The National Golf Links, Baltusrolls,
Yeah,
Seminole,
yeah,
the list of the old, strong clubs.
Yeah, exactly. And I have one of my good dear friends that I, love near you, the guy at Peachtree, Don Perno. He got the job at Peachtree, lost out on it the first time, then got it. And I mean, you talk about just an unbelievable job. Holy cow.
Oh, yeah, my brother, he are friends because Don's one of his accounts, and he loves Don, and he tells me about him. He's like, yeah, that place is amazing.
Yeah, and he is the best. And if anybody ever listens to this, just call him Shift F8. Because when we worked together in Hawaii, if you hit Shift F8, you would basically delete the entire day sales and would have to manually enter them. And that knucklehead found a way every other time he worked to do that, and it was mind-boggling. So his nickname for us is still Shift F8. And so, but yeah, I mean, again, that's why I like, he's a friend. I met him in Hawaii, and Jason and some of these guys that I'm still very good friends with and talk to. That one I regret, and I regret quitting playing. I should have at least given it a couple more years. I do regret that. But I mean, everybody has regrets, and it is what it is. And when I left Turner Hill, struggled for a while, and my wife has such an incredible job here that we were not going to move, and so I had to try and find other avenues. And that's why I got into this clinic business, and broke my hand. Really didn't play much golf for 4 years because no one knew I had a broken hand. So when that got fixed, I really kind of got the bug to start playing again. And then, 2 years later, we buy the club. So I'm excited about playing golf again. I played a lot of evening golf with this group of guys I play with. One, because they play after work. Two, they play super fast. They're degenerate gamblers, and just Pete, I am a world-class needler. I mean, I am brutal, right? And boy, there's two guys in this group that make me look like just an angel. They are ruthless, and it's so much fun to listen to these guys tell stories, and just rib each other. And it's just, it brings you back to when I fell in love with the game and why I fell in love with the game. And, I hung in there to qualify for the Club Pro. And so that kind of motivated me more. And now, I'm excited about all of it again. I'm excited about the business, the game, getting people to help teach. I don't teach because I just don't have time or patience for it. Still trying to find a full-time teacher up there because I think it's important to offer that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I like it all, man. I love to run tournaments. That's my favorite thing to do. I love to treat guys like it's a tour event and make them feel special and do that stuff. I always have. So yeah, for the most part, it's just like everybody else. Everybody's got parts of the business they love, parts of the business they hate. But I like that it's a seasonal club, man. I don't know how guys down by you do it 12 months a year. Every time I had a 12-month job, man, I wanted to kill myself.
It does get brutal.
It does, man. There's just no break. And at least, seasonal clubs, there's a start, there's a finish. You can't wait for it to finish, and then now I can't wait for it to start up again, right?
Yeah, you recharge. It's what you need.
Yeah, yeah. So, but you do. You know what I really missed is I'm not going to Orlando for the show because I like seeing the people that I sometimes only get to see once a year, and that's a big disappointment. So, but that's about it. I mean, it's been an interesting ride. I can tell you that. A lot of stories I can't tell you on this thing. So when I come down and stop and see a couple of bottles of wine, I could tell some really good stories.
Yeah, I've got to get up there. I mean, all the guys keep telling me that hopefully this summer when things loosen up, I'm definitely got to get up there and hang out and shit. Hopefully, maybe by then the podcast is big enough that we can say anything we want. I mean, we can say pretty much anything we want now, but we can really let rip. If it grows enough to that point, yeah, I'll take you up on the wine and we'll do it live in front of everybody.
Yeah, it'd be fun, man. So. Hey, I wish you the best with this. I give you a lot of credit. So you're doing something that I would never have the courage to do, even though I like to talk and tell stories. It's great. I think it's great what you're doing. I think you know enough people and you've got a strong enough following with your friends and coworkers that, again, I'm going to try and have Brian Gathright, you can get him. I got to meet Ted Scott, Bubba's caddy. I'm telling you,
Ted emailed me the other day. I reached out to him last week, and he got back to me and said, "Yeah, just shoot me some times what you're thinking, and we'll put it together." So yeah, he's going to be coming on. That'll be fun.
He stayed with me at the club during the BMW because he's friends with. Long story, he's friends with the guys at Estancia, and my friend Mark Winkley, who I work a lot with. Called and said, "Do you think Ted can stay there?" I'm like, "Yeah." And he's a tremendous golfer. People have no idea how good that guy is.
Mm-hmm.
So a bunch of the caddies play, but he is just a gentleman. And man, you talk about a great storyteller. Make sure he walks you through how he got into caddying at that first Nike event. And that story, it is one of the greatest, funniest stories you'll ever hear.
All right, I'll make a note of that.
Yes, the guy's priceless, and I'll send him a text. Tell him, make sure you tell that story. It's awesome. He is a character, and just a great dude. Really, really great guy.
When I played in 01 and 02 was my first year playing touring golf, and it was Heath Slocum's dad ran the tour. It was all in the Southeast, and the story, everybody knows the story of Heath and Boo and Bubba, but I ran out of money and went back to work, and Bubba had just got out of school the next year. And everyone, Boo used to tell me all the time, wait till you see Bubba come out. This guy he just does some some of the craziest shots you'll ever see hit on a golf course, and he pulls them off like they're nothing.
Yeah.
That was a long time ago.
Fascinating? It's fascinating that when I was talking to Ted, he's like, yeah, Bubba's like, man, I these kids are too long now. I can't keep up with them and this and that. And I'm like, and it's, Bubba's still crazy long.
Mm-hmm.
But, when I was in Dallas watching Mac Meisner play and that kid, Johnny Kiefer, and all those kids at that tournament in Dallas, and then, and those are the two guys, two of the kids that work with Brian Gathright. And then I'm in Brian's teaching center, and they have a nice 2-bay range, and he's like, hey, you want to come in here? When this next kid comes in here, just come sit in here and watch him. He's one of my high school students, and he's going to Baylor. And he comes in, and he's not 150 pounds. He's about 5'10", typical wiry,
Right.
And he just played in the World Junior or something in Miami or something like that. And I don't know what he finished.
That was it's one the week before Christmas, the World Amateur.
Yeah.
I had a couple students who went down for that.
Yeah, so Brian's like, what's the matter? He goes, I can't figure out this ping driver or this Titleist driver in the shaft and blah, 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 blah. And he's in there just, typical mile-a-minute high school kid. Didn't warm up and just starts ripping drivers, right?
Miss those days.
Now, we're on the back of Cordilleras Range, and it's on the front end, the main end by the clubhouse in the first tee is 2 decks. And there's a bunker on the lower end on the right side, which they all aim for. And I'm watching these drivers, I'm like, Jesus. And you gotta remember, I'm long, man. So you gotta really hit it far to kind of get my attention. I'm looking at it, and I'm thinking, Jesus Christ, are these things going over that bunker? And I kind of peek up, and I look at the launch monitor. Carry 313, carry 314, carry 3. Every one of them flew over 310. Every one of them. And he had to hit 40 of them. And I look at Brian, and he goes, I told you. And I'm like, wow, man. So yeah, he's going to Baylor. Kiefer goes to Baylor. Mac Meisner's at SMU, and they're all in Brian's stable. He's got a bunch of girls, and you know, I give Brian a lot of credit, man. He kind of had enough of the tour players, and is focusing on the college kids. And you know, hopefully Mac makes the Walker Cup, which would be awesome. His brother just won the Texas State Open, shot 19 under. His brother played at Rice, so it's he's got a stable. He'll be so. I'll put you two together. He can.
Yeah, that'd be fun.
He could tell a lot of great stories with, you know, he could tell a lot of Nota Begay stories and Jimmy Walker stories and Cameron Beckman and you know, Harvey Pennick. He worked with Pennick. That's how Brian really got to learn how to teach. So
that's really cool.
Just an insightful. Yeah. And he's another just sincerely sweet guy that, you know, just always giving and just brilliant at what he does, man. And you know, those teachers they're different. You know, just like we were talking about mechanics and blueprints, guys like him, they see it in the golf swing. You know, it's a skill that you can't teach that skill. You know what I mean? You just gotta do it millions of times and learn it. And it's amazing when I go see him and the other guy, Mark Winkley, who's another guy that's just incredible at the golf swing, how quickly they can diagnose something and fix it. It's just amazing to me. So, you know, but I'm lucky. I'm surrounded with two just world-class teachers. So I've always been lucky in that regard.
Well, before Jenna and the boys get pissed off at me, and I haven't even met them, you want to do a few we do 9-hole rapid fire, and then I'll let you get back to the family.
Yeah, man, let it rip. This has been fun, though. Thank you for letting me yak.
You got it. It's always fun to listen to people and learn more. But in this industry, I mean, there's so much out there and so many different avenues. It's fun to hear the stories and what people have done and their perspectives. It's been very enlightening for me. I probably learned as much or more than anybody that listens to these things. Let's see. First one. If let's say you win a National Club Pro and you get in a tour event and you win a couple of those and now you're on the Ryder Cup, what would be your walk-up song to the first hole?
Hell's Bells.
I like that one. All right. If you could have anyone swing in the world or throughout history, whose would it be?
Elkington's.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. He had a sweet swing. Biggest celebrity name in your phone?
Ooh, biggest. Man, that's a tough one.
And I know a few of them, so if you want to say two so you don't piss any one off over the other, then go ahead, or three, whatever you want.
No, none of them would give a crap. Boy, I would have to say, you know, I'm going to go with three. Jimmy Walker, Nota Begay, and Danny Ainge.
Yeah, those are three good ones.
Yeah, I'm trying to think if I'm missing one now. There's a couple of female actresses I would like to put in there, but I don't have them yet. So.
What about Ray?
Ray Allen?
Mm-hmm.
I don't have Ray's number. I could call Dr. McKeon and call Ray. I've played with Ray, I don't know, 20 times. What a great person and great player he is. But I don't have his cell phone.
Oh, yep. Okay. I always wondered about that. That's kind of where that question came from.
Yeah, no, you know, it's funny you ask because when I see McKeon, I always ask him how's Ray doing. And you know what? Who I used to have was Doc Rivers, but I don't have Doc's since when Doc moved to LA. I don't have Doc's phone anymore. But I could. Doc's another guy that I could call up and he'd pick up the phone and do anything for me. He's another great guy.
Yeah, he
was a member at Turner Hill. Yeah, I've played a lot of golf with Doc. Yep.
Let's see. Best course you've ever played, because you played a lot of them.
Oakmont.
Ooh, that's one I got to get to. Larry Milush keeps telling me anytime I come to Pittsburgh, let him know.
Well, go ahead and finish this, and I'll tell you a super quick Oakmont story.
All right. Your dream foursome. Anybody in history?
My grandfather, who was dead when I was born, so I never got to meet him.
Mm-hmm.
Byron Nelson. Arnold. That's it.
And you. That'd be. I'd like to be a caddy in that one. Listen to some of those stories.
Yeah, it's funny. I've been asked that before, and people are always shocked when I tell you about my grandfather. Because I was born with three grandparents. They all lived into their 90s, and he's the one that I think about because I never got to meet him.
Mm-hmm.
I'm sure he didn't play golf, but I always throw that in there just to throw people off.
Let's see here. Most used app on your phone.
Ways.
All right. If there is a movie about your life, what actor is going to play you?
Well, I get compared to somebody all the time, but I can't stand him because he's a liberal douche, so I won't mention his name. I'm going to go with John Hamm.
He's a pretty cool dude. I like how smooth.
Yeah, I'd have to lose 40 pounds, but that's what we're going with.
Couple more. First word out of your mouth when you hit a bad shot.
Fuck.
That's mine too, and I knew someone would finally say it. I knew I'd hit it off with somebody on that one.
I'll be honest with you. I've got a worse one, but I just didn't think that was too appropriate.
And then the last one, I asked everybody this one. Your opinion, the greatest golfer of all time.
I think it was Hogan.
Now, that's a new one. It's been 50-50 Jack or Tiger, but Hogan is the new one.
Not even close. It's either Hogan, Nelson, or Snead. Those other two knuckleheads couldn't hold their jock in their time, in their era, what they had to deal with, transportation, equipment, all that stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, Tiger, as great as he was, is such a product of modern equipment. I mean, hey, listen, I'm not going to tell you him and Jack aren't great, but if you really study your history and really dig into what those three guys accomplished and how good they were, and here's the other thing that no one ever wants to really talk about. The level of competition that they had was enormous compared to what Tiger and Jack had. Jack had good competition, but those three guys, I mean, come on, it's ridiculous. So, and I've had this discussion. I've got a guy that I'm friends with, Dick Connolly, one of my mentors here, who actually managed Arnold Palmer's money and was one of Arnold's very, very dear best friends. We used to have this discussion a lot and talk about, you got to really dig into the facts of who you were competing against. And so, I just think people forget about how good that group of people were.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially like you said, given the equipment, and not only the equipment they were using, but the equipment they used to manicure the golf course.
Oh, no, but again, the travel, I mean, just that alone, no money. I mean, the hard lives they came from. Everybody talks about, oh, poor Tiger, and poor Tiger's been kissed since he was 5 years old. And those guys were dirt poor. I mean, poor. So I don't want to hear about, any of the modern woes of these clowns. Those guys knew what real suffering and real work and dedication was when they had absolutely no money. Tiger's never had no money.
Sleeping in the bunker. That Hogan documentary, sleeping in the bunker with a newspaper for a blanket.
Right. You think Tiger did that? You think Jack? Everybody knows Jack was a fairly well-off, upper middle class because his dad was wealthy, and that's great. And Jack was awesome, but but I'll take. You know what though? I'm gonna tell you something. So I met Palmer briefly. I've met Jack several times. at course openings and things like that. But the guy who I won't bore you with how, but I met and spent a lot of time with was Gary Player.
Mm-hmm.
Boy, what an absolute gentleman, and just a treasure and joy to be around. Just a joy. And I'll give you a quick story about him. He came out to Turner Hill when he was being sponsored by SAP he did this corporate event. SAP bought out the golf course. They brought in like 18 of their biggest people because they had a huge convention here. And he basically played 6 holes with each of them. And this is the third time that I had spent basically a day with him. He shows up and I walk up to him and he looks at me and I go, "Hey, I know you don't remember me." And he goes, "Yeah, I do. Where do I know you from?" I said, "Well, I opened Hale Plantation." He goes, "Oh, that's right." And because he designed Hale Plantation. Now, he had flown in from Asia. They had lost his luggage. He didn't have any contacts, didn't have any clubs, didn't have any shoes. He played with rental clubs, bought a pair of shoes, and bought balls, insisted on paying for them. And then he asked me, "I don't have any contacts. I can't see. Do you think one of your guys can kind of caddy me around in the cart, point me in the right direction so I don't embarrass myself?" Right? I said, "Absolutely." So the guy who was helping me, Matt Fox, who's a longtime club pro, did it. What a treat, right?
Right.
So we get done, and he's going to go give a clinic to everybody together on the range. He comes over there, grabs Matt, peels off $300, and hands it to Matt. And Matt's like, "I'm not taking that." He goes, "Yes, you are." He goes, your time's as valuable as anybody else's. You helped me. You're taking the $300, and I appreciate your help. And I tell people that story as a thing to talk about just how classy Gary Player is. And I've heard numerous stories about Jack and some of those other knuckleheads that when that happens to them, they'll sign a glove, and it's always the opposite of, "It was an honor for you to caddy for me," or "It was an honor for you to be around me." And, and I've heard too many of those stories. And, again, that's why I love Gary Player. I think he's just the absolute best.
Yeah, it's pretty hard to beat that kind of character.
Yeah, he is. I mean, it's just, remember. So let me tell you my quick Oakmont story.
Yes, please.
So first time I went to play Oakmont, Rudy Bignovic, right? Invited us out there, and I took John Sadowski, our superintendent at Turner Hill. So we went out there in mid-October, right, to go play. So we get there. We played somewhere else the day before, so we go out to play Oakmont. It is absolutely freezing. It's blowing so hard you can't even imagine. And there's maybe a 2-hour frost delay, right? Mm-hmm. So we're waiting, sitting around. And it is blowing so hard you can't imagine. Finally warms up. I tee off on number 1. I hit driver 9-iron to the front part of the green, pins in the back. Hit the putt, goes off the green. Chip it in. I put it right off the green. I chip it in for par. That was the only par I made that day.
Ooh.
That's how hard the golf course played. I go to number 2, pins back left. I hit it about 3 feet. Caddy looks at me, goes, "If it doesn't go in, it's going off the green." I'm like, "Dude, you got to be kidding me." He goes, "I'm serious. If it doesn't go in, it's going off the green." Sure enough, rolled it right by. I mean, hit it as soft as I could. Never stopped. Rolled right off the green.
That's amazing.
And then it is amazing, right? So now it's freezing, it's blowing. It's so absurd, right? So we're coming up, was it 10, 11? No, we're going down 12 to par 5. And here comes Bob Ford, bundled up like Nanook of the North with a guy from the USGA. And he pulls over. He goes, "Hey, you guys having any fun?" I go, "Well, I made my 1 par. And I say, "Bob, just out of curiosity," because they had the stem meter, "how fast are the greens rolling?" He goes, "They're 18 on the stem."
Oh. I mean, that's you laugh at that stuff when in like the first 3 holes, and then after that, there's nothing you can do. It's so brutal.
No. no, we couldn't. Again, and we just accepted it because it was so cold and windy that we weren't going to quit.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next day, he actually played with us, which was an absolute joy, right? Me, him, and John, and I can't remember who the fourth was. And it was a beautiful day, and it was fine. The golf course was, again, I enjoyed it, immensely. And then we were walking down a hole, and I asked him, I said, hey, how often do you break par? And he goes, from these tees? Never. I go, really? He goes, yeah, I never play these tees. He goes, I'm never playing back here. This is stupid. No way, man. So there's another real gentleman that I've enjoyed meeting, and just what a great guy he is, man.
Mm-hmm.
Have you gotten down to play Seminole?
No, and that's on the bucket list. That's one of my questions. What course would you love to play? It's Seminole. And I go down there. Dan Hellman works with me, helps mend some of my beat up body, and Dan's in Fort Lauderdale. So next time I go down there, I'm going to somehow, some way try to get out at Seminole.
Yeah. And the most beautiful place I ever played was Fisher's Island. That place is just amazing.
I heard it's ridiculous.
It's on a level that you just can't even explain it till you go out there and you're looking out the ocean at all 18 holes. It's just amazing.
Wow.
The other one I love, I played it a bunch because of my TaylorMade relationships, is LA North. That's another one that's amazing.
I think which one is the one where the Playboy Mansion? Is that the north or south?
Yeah, that's the North course.
I have played that one. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and when we did it, for the Open, that's really cool. Have you played Mountain Lake? I haven't played Mountain Lake yet in Florida.
No, the only stuff I really played in Florida was when I was trying to play, and that was all usually not the top tier courses, because everything was travel, save, like the story, save your money, go down there playing something to get through, and okay, then you playing the other stuff. But when all my friends got to the point where they were working at some of those clubs, then I really didn't have any money to go down there anymore. So
exactly.
SOL.
Yeah, I know. That's the battle, man. So, and I respect all these guys that got the tour cards or didn't go to, but the guys who had to grind and go, well, not anymore, the mini tours and again, now the Nike and what all those, the ancillary tour. I mean, I just think those guys are so much tougher when they come out of that and struggle a little bit. And David Duval was a perfect example.
Mm-hmm.
David Duval, as great as he was, had to play a year out there. Jimmy Walker, if you ask Jimmy, his greatest putt ever was the putt he made to keep his tour card at Disney the one year. And then he went and, excelled after that. Had to make like a 10-foot par putt to finish dead last to keep his tour card. I love that stuff.
It's the stuff you don't ever hear about either, which is a shame.
Yeah, no, you got to get really into the, Jesus, again, you could do a whole movie on just tour school nightmares, so, anyway, so Pete, this was fun, man. I hope, I hope you enjoyed it. I hope it turns out well. I appreciate it. Anybody that knows you, please, if they ever come up that way, tell them to call me. I like to have everybody from around the country try and see that facility because I always hear the same thing. Wow, what a hidden gem. That's what you hear over and over and over.
Yeah, I'll direct a lot of them there, especially as we're getting into season.
Yeah. Yeah. If they like firm and fast greens, that's the place to come play.
Definitely. It's been great. I can't wait to get up there myself. And I'll get you all the links and everything as soon as this gets edited and ready. I'm sure everyone's going to love it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll send it out too, and let the members listen to it. I'll blast it out to there, and maybe you get some following there. And awesome. I'll make sure I hook you up. I'll hook you up with Brian. Okay.
Perfect. Thanks, George. You have a great night.
Take care. Thank you so much.
All right, everybody. Thank you so much for listening to today's show. If you enjoyed it, you can find more information on today's episode and other topics at golf360.blog. There you'll find the show notes and links related to this episode, as well as any other episode that we've done so far to date. If you're interested in improving your game and would like to learn more from yours truly by taking a private lesson, a half-day or multi-day school, club or putter fitting, you can reach me through the blog site or by email, pete@golf360.blog. So some of you may be asking, what is the golf paradigm? All you have to do is click on the homepage while on my blog site to discover how you can start playing better than you ever thought possible. Or you can simply sign up, again, on the blog page for my instructional videos where I give regular tips on all areas of the game to include the swing, club design and fitting, health, fitness and nutrition, the mental aspects, and equally as important, the integration of all those things together. I'm also on social media, and you can find me at The Golf Paradigm. That's Paradigm, and I'm on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And don't forget to subscribe to my YouTube channel, also under the same name, The Golf Paradigm. Facebook is usually the best way to reach me for questions and or comments, and I look forward to hearing what all of you have to say. This podcast is brought to you in part by Old South Golf Links. A short ride across a bridge from Hilton Head Island is one of the area's finest golf courses and a hidden treasure. Set up on towering pines and ancient oaks with sweeping marsh vistas, truly makes Old South Golf Links a one-of-a-kind golfing experience. The Clyde Johnson design was named one of the top 10 new public courses when it opened, and it also takes full advantage of the natural beauty of the Low Country. Old South is a fun and unique challenge for golfers of every skill level and a favorite of both locals and visitors. Whether it's your first time here or you're a regular, you'll be treated and feel like family. From the bag drop to check-in at the fully stocked pro shop with both men's and women's apparel, to breakfast or lunch before or after your round, the staff is always ready and willing to help. Experience for yourself why Old South is one of the premier golf courses in the Hilton Head area and why it will quickly become a favorite of yours too. Visit them in person or online at www.oldsouthgolf.com, or to make it tee time, simply call the pro shop at 843-785-5353.